Chapter 458. As soon as Guiyi's words fell, the Samsara Legion, who had been waiting for a long time, were all stunned. Then, their faces suddenly changed, because their lord, Yi Chun, was still standing in the sky. If they accidentally hurt Yi Chun, they would not be able to atone for their sins, even if they died 10,000 times. Yi Chun naturally heard Guiyi's order to the Samsara Legion. He also saw the stunned expressions of the Samsara Legion and understood the reason for this. In fact, Guiyi did not intend to take this opportunity to hurt Yi Chun. Not only did he not intend to do so, he did not even think about it. As for the reason, it was very simple. Guiyi was loyal to Yi Chun. Even if Guiyi had to die, he did not want Yi Chun to be hurt in the slightest. However, Guiyi had given this order. At first glance, it was really disrespectful to Yi Chun. In fact, Guiyi knew Yi Chun's strength. He also knew that the arrows could not hurt Yi Chun. Most importantly, the arrows could not reach Yi Chun at all. It should be noted that Yi Chun's floating position was far beyond the shooting range of the diamond-level arrows. However, at first glance, it was too disrespectful to Yi Chun. But Guiyi knew that Yi Chun would not blame him for this at all. Otherwise, he would not have dared to give this order. As for letting the Samsara Legion soldiers go to the edge of the giant pit, the veterans of the Samsara Legion could do it, but the recruits could not. Because the veterans of the Samsara Legion were all Overlord-level generals and would soon advance to Saint-level generals. They were strong enough to fight these demonic beasts head-on. However, none of the recruits of the Samsara Legion had advanced to the innate realm. They did not have the strength to fight the demonic beasts head-on. They could only fight from a distance. If they ran to the edge of the giant pit, Yi Chun would be busy taking care of the recruits. Of course, this was not important. What mattered was that Yi Chun had to kill the demonic beasts that jumped out to risk their lives. Otherwise, there would be casualties among the new recruits of Samsara City. One had to know that crippled demonic beasts were not without any attacking power. If a recruit were to be touched by them, even if they did not die, they would be seriously injured. However, if the mystical beasts were killed by Yi Chun, how could the recruits of the Samsara Legion gain experience and improve their strength? It was with this in mind that Guiyi ordered the soldiers of the Samsara Legion to attack the army of monsters. The Samsara Legion's loyalty was commendable. Not bad. Not bad. Thinking of this, Yi Chun couldn't help but smile. He then looked at the Samsara Legion and shouted, "Listen to the military advisor's orders. The range of the arrows won't reach me." The Samsara Legion members who were just about to get angry at Guiyi were stunned when they heard this. Then they all smiled awkwardly. In the next second, the soldiers of the Samsara Legion turned solemn and released the bowstrings in their right hands. The sound of the arrows piercing through the air was heard. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 510,000 arrows left the bowstrings in an instant and flew into the sky. In the blink of an eye, 510,000 arrows were high up in the sky. When the soldiers of the Samsara Legion saw that the arrows were still some distance away from Yi Chun, they all heaved a sigh of relief. At this moment, the 510,000 arrows fell toward the ground at a rapid speed. In the deep pit, the demonic beast army saw the arrows coming from the sky at a rapid speed. Their hair stood on end, and they roared at the sky. Roar, roar, roar. Their roars were full of anger. However, there was also some fear and unwillingness hidden in this anger. They never thought that Yi Chun would be so shameless. He trapped them and crippled whoever went up. Then, he ordered his soldiers to shoot them with arrows. Aggrieved, angry, and afraid. These were the thoughts of the demonic beast army at this moment. Yi Chun, you despicable, shameless, and lowly human. Less out if you have the guts. No one will run away. Let's fight. Yi Chun, you deserve to be called the #1 person of the human race. I look down on you. Shameless. Yi Chun, if you're a man, let us out. Do you dare or not? The demonic beasts roared crazily out of anger and fear. In the sky, Yi Chun glanced at the ferocious and violent demonic beast army and curled his lips in disdain. A bunch of ants. If I didn't want to train my soldiers, you bastards wouldn't even have a chance to speak. Just as Yi-Chun thought of this, 510,000 arrows fell into the huge pit. The demonic beasts that were roaring at Yi-Chun immediately shut their mouths. Poochie, poochie, poochie. The sound of arrows piercing into flesh was heard in an instant. The bows and arrows in the hands of the Samsara Legion soldiers were all diamond level. They were powerful enough to injure the demonic beasts, but they couldn't kill the demonic beasts directly. Of course, this was only for ordinary soldiers. The veterans of the Samsara Legion did not fall into this category. They had infused their innate true chi into the bows and arrows from the very beginning. Their arrows were extremely destructive. Once they hit the demonic beasts, they would pierce into the bodies of the demonic beasts directly. Of course, because they were shooting from a distance, their accuracy was not great. However, there were still thousands of demonic beasts that were unlucky enough to be shot in the head and die immediately. Ow, 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 ow. Mournful howls followed closely from the huge pit. Yi-Chun, you bastard. I want you dead. I want you dead. Charge. Let's fight it out with them. Charge. If this goes on, we will all die. Even if we die, I don't want to wait for death. Fight. Kill as many as you can. There are no cowards among us demonic beasts. Charge. Roar. 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 An earth-shattering roar sounded instantly. In the next second, 100,000 demonic beasts suddenly enlarged and filled the huge pit in an instant. Then, one by one, they leaped towards the ground with ferocious expressions. In the sky, Yi-Chun, who had been observing the army of demonic beasts, sneered when he saw this scene. An ant trying to shake a big tree. How laughable! At the thought of this, Yi-Chun pointed his sword finger with his right hand. In the next second, 100,000 long spears vibrated and shot rapidly towards the 100,000 demonic beasts that leaped towards the ground. At the same time, the sound of arrows piercing through the air was heard in unison. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. 510,000 arrows were released instantly and flew out from the army of the Samsara Legion. They were extremely fast and shot towards the 100,000 demonic beasts that had leaped into the air. These demonic beasts in the huge pit panicked when the Samsara Legion attacked them. This was because Yi-Chun was in the sky. This was an undeniable fact. Even if the arrows could not reach Yi-Chun, the soldiers of the Samsara Legion could not help but panic. But now 100,000 demonic beasts had leaped into the air. With such an obvious target, there was no need to be polite. In the next second, the sound of the legs of the demonic beasts being pierced was heard densely. Crack, crack, crack. 100,000 demonic beasts, without exception, had their legs pierced by the spears that descended with golden light. The excruciating pain instantly stimulated the demonic beasts to howl miserably. Ow, ow. At this moment, the arrows that blotted out the sky descended. Chapter 459. Poochie, poochie, poochie. The sound of arrows piercing into flesh suddenly rang out intensely. The 100,000 demonic beasts whose legs had been pierced by the spears instantly turned into hedgehogs. Their bodies were full of arrows as they fell to the ground. In the next second, the sound of heavy objects falling to the ground could be heard. Bang, bang, bang. 100,000 demonic beasts fell heavily to the ground, causing the earth to tremble. Mournful howls and angry curses followed closely behind. Ow, ow. Chirp, chirp. Yi-Chun. I want you dead. I want you dead. Despicable. Shameless. Trash. You're the most powerful person in the human race in vain. Roar. Yi-Chun. Your grandpa bear swears. As long as I can survive, I'll definitely go to Samsara City in the real world to settle accounts with you. At that time, I'll raise your Samsara City to the ground. I won't let anyone related to you go. The demonic beasts howled and cursed. The demonic beasts that were about to jump out of the huge pit immediately stopped. The huge pit was huge. Otherwise, wouldn't have been able to hold 600,000 demonic beasts. However, only 100,000 demonic beasts could jump out at once. This was because they needed to grow in size. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to break free from the Quagmire's control. Of course, this wasn't important. What was important was that the demonic beasts in the huge pit had clearly confirmed one thing. Even if they all jumped out, it would be useless. Behind Yi Chun, the 510,000 golden spears would descend at any time. As long as they dared to move, they would definitely be crippled by Yi Chun. Just like those demonic beasts that had just jumped out of the huge pit, their legs were instantly pierced. No one could escape. It was useless even if they tried. It was also because of this that the demonic beasts' hearts were quickly filled with grievance, depression, and fear. Even if they roared, cursed, and roared at the top of their lungs, they couldn't get rid of the anger and fear in their hearts. This was because they knew that it wouldn't be long before they all faced the same ending. They would be shot to death by the Samsara Legion. And this was not the result they wanted to see. The reason was simple. These monsters were the monsters in the real world. To be precise, they were also players. They existed like human players and had all kinds of privileges. However, they also had all kinds of restrictions and punishments. For example, losing a level after death. Once they were killed by the Samsara core, the benefits they had gained from invading the human world would immediately be reduced back to their original state. To be more precise, once they were killed, they would definitely revert back to the level of a beast. Once they returned to the beast level, they would completely become cannon fodder among the demon race in the real world. They would have to listen to the orders of other demon beasts. Otherwise, they would all be mercilessly killed. At this very moment, they had all advanced to become demonic beasts. How could they be willing to be beaten back to their original form? Therefore, they didn't want to die. They wanted to escape. If they really couldn't escape, they weren't willing to do nothing and wait for death. However, the cruel reality clearly told them one thing. Trying to escape? No way. Do you want to risk your life? There was also no way. In the sky, Yichen listened to the curses of the monsters and smiled coldly. Then, with a thought, the black and thick god spear instantly appeared. Yichen wanted to train his troops. However, those monsters who were crippled dared to say that they wanted to take revenge on Yichen. How could Yichen not respond? On the ground, the demonic beasts that had been loudly cursing Yichen immediately stopped when they saw the god-slaying spear that had suddenly appeared in the sky. Then, each and every one of them widened their beastly eyes as they stared at the black, thick god-slaying spear in front of Yichen in terror. It's that spear. Damn it. Why did this bastard use it? Damn it, you bastards. Why didn't you just obediently let Yichen kill you? Why did you have to be so pretentious? Now that you've been stabbed by the black spear, you'll really die. The monsters discussed in horror. Obviously, they also knew how terrifying the Godslayer was. Otherwise, they wouldn't be like this. And this was the truth. Ever since Yichen's strong rise, there had been a lot of discussions about Yichen in the World Channel. Yichen's strength, Yichen's influence, and Yichen's strength often appeared in the World Channel. Among these, the thing that made the monsters the most vigilant was the Godslayer that suddenly appeared at this moment. Those who were killed by it would die in reality. Although it was said that there was a probability, even if there was a probability, these monsters didn't dare to take the risk. They were indeed monsters. They were naturally violent and hostile to humans. However, they also had life. They were afraid of death and didn't want to die. Therefore, when Yichen summoned the god-slaying spear, the hearts of the demonic beasts all skipped a beat. Yichen couldn't help but raise his eyebrows when he heard the monster's fearful discussion. At this moment, the monster that had said that he wanted to seek revenge on Yichen didn't hesitate to beg for mercy. Yichen, I was just joking. Really, we're all players. Don't you want to train your troops? I won't move. Just let your troops kill us. We'll cooperate. We'll definitely cooperate. Yes. Yichen, we won't move. Let your troops kill us. We'll cooperate fully. In the future, in the real world, we'll treat you as our king. We won't cause trouble in your territory. If you need anything, just let us know. We'll definitely do our best to fulfill your orders. The monsters kept saying nice things one after another. The human players who were listening in the distance were dumbfounded. F*CK. These bastards from the monster race. How did they learn the shamelessness of humans so thoroughly? Damn, they're indeed monsters. Damn, they've become spirits. They're all ridiculously smart. Boss Yichen, don't listen to the nonsense of these idiots. Don't believe them. Kill them. Use that spear and stab them to death one by one. Yes, yes. Boss Yi Chun, you're the #1 player in the human race. Don't be deceived by the monster race's flowery words. Boss Yi Chun killed them. Just as the human players were worried that Yi Chun would be tempted, the sound of arrows piercing through the air was suddenly heard. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the next second, 510,000 arrows rose into the air and fell towards the monster army. The monsters that were waiting for Yi Chen's answer were exactly the same as before. None of them moved. Not only did they not move, but they also hurriedly exposed their vital points. They looked like they couldn't wait to die. Yi Chen glanced at the monsters on the ground who were determined to die. He couldn't help but smirk. No matter how the world changed, the law of the jungle wouldn't change. Similarly, the strong would be respected. Whoever had a harder fist would be the boss. Whoever could set the rules. Thinking of this, Yi Chen's eyes suddenly widened. Then, he pointed at the monsters on the ground. In the next second, the black and thick God-Slayer trembled violently. Then, it flew rapidly toward the ground. Chapter 460. The God-Slayer's speed was extremely fast, far exceeding the speed of Yi Chen's diamond great spear. It reached the ground in the blink of an eye. Puffed. A sound was heard instantly. The God-Slayer pierced through the head of the black bear that had been shouting the most fiercely. At the same time, the God-Slayer's spear tip flashed with a dark light, and the black bear's soul was instantly devoured. The God-Slayer's characteristic, soul-devouring, had been activated. Although there was a probability that the God-Slayer's soul-devouring characteristic would be activated, the probability would change according to Yi Chen's strength and the opponent's strength. The stronger Yi Chen's strength, the higher the probability that the God-Slayer would devour souls. And now, Yi Chen was already in the Purple Mansion realm, which was far beyond the realm of monsters. Therefore, the God-Slayer's soul-devouring characteristic would be activated 100% of the time. The scene of the huge and fat black bear instantly being stabbed to death by the God-Slayer frightened all the monsters on the ground. The last thing they wanted to see was being killed by the God-Slayer. And now, the God-Slayer had started to harvest the lives of their own kind. How could the monsters, who knew the God-Slayer's characteristics very well, not be afraid? How could they not be terrified? They were monsters, and this was true. However, they were also afraid of death. They were afraid that after being killed by Yi Chen's God-Slayer in the game world, they would die in the real world as well. They would die completely. Therefore, the monsters began to panic and tremble. They were afraid. They were afraid of death, just like how humans were afraid of death. In the next second, the monsters looked at Yi Chen with fear in their eyes. Then, they burst into an uproar. Grandpa Yi Chen, Piggy didn't scold you just now, and he didn't say that he wanted to take revenge on you. Don't kill Piggy. A black boar monster shouted at Yi Chen with extreme fear in its eyes. Let me go. As long as you let me go, I'm willing to lead the entire wolf tribe to recognize you as our master. A gray wolf demon beast shouted at Yi Chen with a sincere face. I was wrong. King Yi Chen, this lowly one is willing to be your servant. Please forgive me. A large gray rat stammered. The beasts began to beg for mercy, frantically begging for mercy. They were afraid that they would be God-Slayer's next target. Yi Chen glanced at the demonic beasts that were begging for mercy and curled his lips in disdain. Those who don't know you might really believe you. In fact, it was impossible for the demon race to submit to Yi Chen. They tried their best to please Yi Chen and even begged Yi Chen to let them go. It was all for the sake of survival, to live well in the real world. Only when he was alive would he have the hope to take revenge on Yi Chen. Therefore, no matter how much the demonic beasts cursed, how much they begged for mercy, or even how sincerely they submitted, they were unable to move Yi Chen. This was because Yi Chen knew that the demon race and the human race were mortal enemies. No matter what they said or did, their ultimate goal was to find Yi Chen for revenge. In this regard, the demon race was not inferior to those despicable humans. Thinking of this, Yi Chen moved his mind and pulled out the God-Slayer from the black bear's head. Then, with a flash of black light, it quickly pierced toward a large hedgehog covered in thorns. The hedgehog demon beast that was crying and begging for mercy saw this, and its eyes suddenly shrank. However, before it could react, the God-slayer directly pierced through its body. With a poochie sound, the hedgehog demon beast was instantly killed. At the same time, the God-slayer's spear tip flashed with a black light. Its devouring ability was instantly activated, and the hedgehog demon beast soul was completely devoured. This time, the God-slayer did not stop. After piercing through the hedgehog demon beast, it directly pierced towards another demon beast. With a poochie sound, it once again pierced towards another demon beast. Again and again, the black light flashed, and the demon beasts were continuously pierced to death by the God-slayer. Then, their souls were completely devoured. In just a breath's time, more than 5,000 demon beasts were completely wiped out by the God-slayer. After the demon beasts saw the God-slayer kill more than 5,000 of their kind in a breath's time, their eyes suddenly widened. Then, they were filled with fear. At this time, their bodies also involuntarily trembled at this time. At this time, 510,000 arrows descended. Poochie, poochie, poochie. The sound of arrows piercing flesh was closely followed by an incomparably dense sound. More than half of the 100,000 demon beasts were shot to death in an instant. The demon beasts that were not shot to death, without exception, all revealed a look of envy and regret. They envied those demon beasts that were shot to death by arrows because they would not die in reality even if they were shot to death by arrows. However, if they were stabbed to death by the God-slayer, it was the complete opposite. They would really die. As for regret, it was very simple. It was because they did not expose their most fatal weakness to the rain of arrows in time. In the sky, Yichen glanced at the demon beasts that were constantly howling on the ground. With a move of his mind, the God-slayer instantly returned to Yichen's side. With a flash of black light, it disappeared. On the ground, the demon beasts' faces were filled with fear. When they saw the God-slayer suddenly leave, they could not help but be stunned. Then, they looked at Yichen with ecstasy. Originally, they thought that Yichen was going to start a massacre and kill them all with his own hands. Who would have thought that Yichen would stop after killing more than 5,000 demon beasts? For those demon beasts that were still alive, this was tantamount to a joyous occasion. They did not want to die. Only by living would they have a chance. Whether it was to become stronger or to seek revenge on Yichen, the premise was to survive. Now that Yichen had stopped attacking, they would definitely be able to survive. In fact, Yichen knew about the demon beasts and understood them. Just now, he attacked because those demon beasts said that they wanted to seek revenge on Yichen. In fact, even if they did not say it, Yichen also knew that once they became stronger, they would definitely find trouble with Yichen when they had the chance. To be precise, it was not only them. The demon beasts in the world were no exception. Even if they did not say that they wanted to seek revenge on Yichen, they would still do so if they wanted to find trouble with Yichen. This was because the demon beasts and the human race were mortal enemies. There was no such thing as reconciliation. And Yichen was the most powerful person in the human race. Without a doubt, he was the first person that the demon beasts wanted to eliminate. Of course, if the demon beasts in the real world wanted to find trouble with Yichen, there was another prerequisite. They had to have sufficient strength. Unfortunately, this did not exist in the real world and would not exist in the future. This was because Yichen was one step ahead after his rebirth. Now, he had become the most powerful person in the real world. His strength was far above the strongest demon beasts by 3 realms. After Yichen ascended, his strength would definitely increase explosively. He would become stronger and more ferocious. The demon beasts in the real world would not be able to catch up to Yichen even if they risked their lives. Moreover, this was only Yichen's strength. In fact, Yichen still had a group of subordinates loyal to Yichen in the future and countless subjects. They would also continue to increase their strength and become stronger. Therefore, it was simply wishful thinking for the demon beasts in the real world to want to challenge Yichen. It was precisely because of this that Yichen only killed those who dared to seek revenge. Otherwise, Yichen would definitely kill them all. Just when the demon beasts were rejoicing that they didn't have to worry about dying in the real world, a black-furred gorilla suddenly roared at the sky and reached a height of 100 meters in the blink of an eye. In the next second, the black-furred gorilla grabbed tens of demon beasts in the huge pit and swallowed them. Seeing this, Yichin narrowed his eyes. A cold light flashed in his eyes. They wanted to devour their own race, to reach the mortal evolution state. Chapter 461. At this moment, the black-haired gorilla devoured dozens of beasts of the same race. It wasn't going crazy. It wanted to advance. Other people might not know the reason for this, but how could Yichin not know? Other than cultivating and devouring humans, there was another way for the demon race to increase their strength. That was to devour their own race. However, such a thing rarely happened because there were more nutritious humans in the real world. Moreover, no demon race was willing to be devoured by their own race and contribute to their race's advancement. If they wanted to devour beasts of the same race, they would definitely be resisted. Of course, these were only the most basic reasons. The most important thing was that once an existence devoured its own race, it would definitely be hunted down by the entire demon race. No demon race would be willing to let such an existence live. This was just like Wang Xiaoming, who was killed by Yichun. He obtained the Blood God Sutra, and in order to increase his strength, he wantonly killed humans. After he was discovered, he became a wanted criminal of the entire human race. Everyone wanted to kill him. Of course, this was what happened in his previous life. In this life, although Wang Xiaoming harmed many people, it was far from the extent of his previous life. Later on, he was completely killed by Yichun. Now, this gorilla was clearly taking advantage of the fact that the beasts in the huge pit were terrified and didn't dare to resist Yichun. In the end, it succeeded. It wanted to advance to the mortal evolution state and ascend to the immortal realm. Originally, the demon race in the real world would only know about the immortal ascension after a long time. However, ever since that black dog demon appeared, this was no longer a secret. Otherwise, this black-haired gorilla wouldn't have attacked its own race and devoured dozens of them. One must know that just based on the number of beasts it devoured, it could only advance to the mortal evolution state at most. Even if it devoured all the beasts here, it wouldn't be able to reach the golden core state of the human race, much less the purple mansion state. This way, the black-haired gorilla wouldn't be able to fight against Yichun at all. Yichun knew this very well, but the black-haired gorilla knew it even better. However, the black-haired gorilla still did it. Therefore, its purpose was self-evident. It wanted to ascend. It did not want to be killed by the soldiers of the Samsara Legion. It did not want its strength to deteriorate and turn into a ferocious beast. It wanted to take a gamble. If it succeeded, it would immediately ascend and leave the Three Kingdoms novice zone. If it failed, it would only be killed by Yichun. Just as Yichun thought of this, crunch, crunch sounds of chewing could be heard. That was the sound of the monster's body being chewed up. It was extremely horrifying and very loud. The players who were watching from afar all had goosebumps. F***CK. What is this black-furred gorilla doing? Don't tell me he's going to pledge his loyalty to Boss Yichun to express his sincerity? F***CK. Please don't do that. If that's the case, what if Boss Yichun lets it off? That'll be bad. This black-furred gorilla appeared outside the safe city I was in. While the players were discussing, the monsters in the huge pit recovered from their shock and looked at the black-furred gorilla furiously. Black-furred, what the F***CK are you trying to do? A tiger monster roared angrily. Black-furred, you be ***starred. Aren't you afraid that the entire shifter race will hunt you down? A leopard monster roared. However, the black-furred gorilla did not respond to them at all. Not only did it not respond, but it also chewed even harder with its huge mouth. Crunch, crunch, a large amount of blood flowed out of the black-furred gorilla's mouth and dyed its fur red. Then, the blood flowed down its black fur. Bastard, you traitor, how dare you betray the shifter race? The tiger monster roared angrily again. Where's this be ***starred? It'll be fine in a while. Those who are at that place, quickly log off and kill it. A mongrel monster roared fiercely. Gulp! A sound was heard. The black-furred gorilla swallowed the corpses of dozens of monsters. Then, it looked at Yi-chun and grinned. Yi-chun, do you see my sincerity? They all see me as a traitor. Can you let me off now? I can swear that as long as you let me off, I'm willing to serve you as my master forever. Despicable. Shameless. Traitor. I'll definitely kill you. The monsters in the huge pit started to curse and roar in agitation. In the sky, Yi-chun, who was hovering in the air, looked at the black-furred gorilla, whose mouth was full of blood, and nodded with a smile. I see your sincerity. You've done well. Very well, very well. The black-furred gorilla was overjoyed when it heard this. Then it shouted, great. From now on, you're my master. I'll take care of these B** stars for you. No need. You could just stand there. Yi-chun raised his eyebrows when he heard this. Then he chuckled and said. The black-furred gorilla's huge eyes flashed with a strange light when it heard this. Then it nodded and said, yes, master. At this moment, the sky was filled with the sound of something breaking through the air again. Whoosh, 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 510,000 arrows rose into the air again and shot rapidly to the ground. When the black-furred gorilla, who was standing in the huge pit, saw this, its originally pitch-black face suddenly changed. It hurriedly looked at Yi-chun and shouted, Master, can I leave this place? Master, can I leave this giant pit first? Don't worry, I won't go too far. Yi-chun looked at the black-furred gorilla when he heard this. Then he chuckled and nodded. The black-furred gorilla was overjoyed when it saw Yi-chun nodding. Without hesitation, it leaped and landed on the ground. In the next second, the black-furred gorilla started running at an extremely fast speed. However, no matter how fast it was, it couldn't compare to the speed of the arrows. Soon, its back was filled with thousands of arrows. Even its head was covered with hundreds of arrows. At the same time, the sky was filled with cries of agony from the monsters. In the distance, the players who had been watching were shocked. They heard what the black-furred gorilla said. They also heard what Yi-chun said. Now, the black-furred gorilla really jumped out and ran out of the range of the arrows. All of this undoubtedly told them one thing. Yi-chun had really accepted the black-furred gorilla as his underling. How can this be? A player shouted in disbelief. Why, Boss Yi-chun, that black-furred gorilla even dares to eat its own kind. It can't possibly be loyal. Yes, Boss Yi-chun, hurry up and kill it. Otherwise, you will definitely be harmed by it. While the players were shouting at Yi-chun in disbelief, the cries of the monsters suddenly became louder and quickly drowned out the players' cries. When Yi-chun, who was watching everything on the ground from the sky, saw this, a mocking look flashed in his eyes. Yi-chun glanced at the black-furred gorilla that ran out of the range of the arrows and stopped. Then, he stopped paying attention to it. Time passed slowly. Wave after wave of arrows descended. The monsters' lives were constantly being harvested by the Samsara Legion. After 10 waves of arrows, only 200,000 monsters were killed. This was under the premise that the monsters deliberately exposed their vitals to the arrows. At the rear of the Samsara Legion, Gui, who had been watching the battlefield, shouted again, "Continue! Finish shooting all the arrows!" As soon as Gui finished speaking, the dense sound of arrows piercing through the air was heard again. Thousands of arrows were released at the same time. Arrows rained down again and again as if they would never stop. After the 30th wave of arrows, the eyes of the black-furred gorilla, who was standing out of the range of the arrows, suddenly lit up. In the sky, Yi-chun, who had been using his divine sense to lock onto the black-furred gorilla, suddenly opened his eyes. It was time to reap the harvest. Chapter 462. Thinking of this, Yi-chun looked directly at the black-haired gorilla who had run out of the arrow range and was standing quietly without moving. With a thought, the Godslayer appeared instantly. The black-haired gorilla, whose eyes were shining, suddenly felt its scalp go numb. A sense of extreme danger instantly appeared in its heart. The next second, the black-haired gorilla hurriedly looked at the sky. When it saw the God-slayer in front of Yi Chun, its two huge gorilla eyes suddenly shrank. Danger, extreme danger. The God-slayer that appeared again was targeting it. This was the black-haired gorilla's sudden thought at this moment. At the thought of this, the black-haired gorilla's eyes suddenly showed a look of panic. It wanted to escape, and it wanted to escape immediately. However, it could not move. If it dared to move, it would mean that it had a guilty conscience. Then, the God-slayer would appear. In this way, its plan would completely fail, and even it would be completely killed. What? Didn't Yi Chun already accept my allegiance? Why is he suddenly showing killing intent towards me? Could it be that Yi Chun was playing with me from the beginning? Or did I expose myself somehow? Thinking of this, the black-haired gorilla's heart suddenly thumped. No, I can't let Yi Chun do it. I have to delay it just a little longer. Just a little longer. I can advance to become a fairy. Then I can directly ascend and don't have to continue staying in this world. Thinking of this, the black-haired gorilla hurriedly looked at Yi Chun and shouted humbly, "Master, do you want to kill all of them? I mean, in reality, I can do it on behalf of Master." In the sky, after Yi Chun heard the black-haired gorilla's words, he curled his lips in disdain and said, "Is the performance over? What is Master saying? Why can't I understand?" When the black-haired gorilla heard this, its heart instantly beat violently, and then it asked blankly. Yi Chun glanced at the black-haired gorilla, who was still trying to stall for time, and could not help but laugh wildly at the sky, then said, "You're waiting for the final moment, and so am I." As soon as Yi Chun finished speaking, the black-furred gorilla's black face involuntarily stiffened, and then became incomparably ferocious. Yi Chun's meaning was obvious. He was telling the black-haired gorilla that Yi Chun had seen through its plan to become a fairy and ascend to the untainted world. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that not only had Yi Chun seen through it, he had even waited for it to advance. As for what Yi Chun's goal was, how could the black-furred gorilla not know? He wanted to kill it the moment it advanced and reaped the greatest benefits. Thinking of this, the black-haired gorilla's mood instantly turned sour. Damn, how could the number one human be so cunning? Just as the black-haired gorilla thought of this, a strong aura suddenly rose from the black-haired gorilla. This was a sign of advancement. The black-haired gorilla, who should have been ecstatic, couldn't feel happy at all. This was because the advancement meant that Yi Chun was about to make his move. In the sky, Yi Chun, who had been staring at the black-haired gorilla, smiled coldly when he saw this. The black-haired gorilla didn't understand Yi Chun at all. Otherwise, it wouldn't have tried to act smart in front of Yi Chun. Of course, the black-haired gorilla wasn't the only one trying to act smart. All the monsters in the huge pit did the same. To be precise, the monsters were angry because the black-haired gorilla ate their own kind. Perhaps it was true at first. After all, the black-haired gorilla ate their own kind. This was something they didn't want to see. Whether it was the game world or the real world, they didn't want to be eaten by their own kind. If anyone dared to eat their own kind, they would attack together. But soon, the demonic beasts realized one thing. This was the game world. If they died, they wouldn't really die. Of course, the premise was that they weren't killed by the God-slayer. The current situation was that they were in a desperate situation. Even if they weren't killed by the black-haired gorilla, they would be killed by Yi Chun's soldiers. So the result was the same. They would all die. If they were killed by the black-haired gorilla, their level would drop, and they would turn back into a beast. If they were killed by Yi Chun's soldiers, their level would also drop, and they would turn back into a beast. But between the two, there was still the uncertain factor of Yi Chun. No one knew if Yi Chun would use the god-slaying spear again. Once Yi Chun used the god-slaying spear, they would truly die. Furthermore, it would be a complete and utter death. Because of this, the monsters that were eaten by the black-haired gorilla didn't resist at all. Otherwise, the black-haired gorilla wouldn't have been able to eat dozens of monsters so easily. One had to know that those monsters were all at the same level as the black-haired gorilla. Even if they enlarged their bodies, they would be able to burst the black-haired gorilla's mouth. Because of this desperate situation, the monsters that weren't eaten by the black-haired gorilla quickly accepted the black-haired gorilla's plan. Then, they cooperated with the black-haired gorilla to put on a show for Yi-chun. For example, they cursed the black-haired gorilla as a traitor and wanted to kill the black-haired gorilla. These were nothing more than telling Yi-chun that the black-haired gorilla had really submitted to Yi-chun and that it was really a traitor of the shifters. Towards the end, the players reminded Yi-chun not to be fooled. The cries of the beasts in the huge pit were already very loud, but after the players reminded them, their cries suddenly doubled in volume. Each and every one of them screamed as if their lives depended on it. Their cries could only be described as tragic. In fact, they screamed with all their might because they didn't want Yi-chun to hear the players' reminder and arouse Yi-chun's vigilance. Once the player's reminder was heard by Yi-chun, it might arouse Yi-chun's vigilance. Then, the black-haired gorilla's plan might fail. The monsters were willing to help the black-haired gorilla out of helplessness. At this moment, they were in a desperate situation. Once the black-haired gorilla succeeded, it would be the first monster to ascend to the Eldritch world. By then, it would definitely be able to increase its strength rapidly. It might even surpass Yi-chun. Although the shifters had the 10,000 demon soul-devouring array to deal with Yi-chun, no one knew if it would succeed. If there was a member of the shifters who was as powerful as Yi-chun in the real world, or even more powerful than Yi-chun, the shifters in the real world wouldn't be afraid of Yi-chun. By then, they could directly seek revenge on Yi-chun. How simple would that be? These were the thoughts of the monstrous beasts here. However, no matter how realistic their acting was and how invested they were in their acting, it was completely useless. That was because Yi-chun had already seen through this. Moreover, not only did Yi-chun see through it, but he also cooperated with it. His goal was to wait for the black-haired gorilla to evolve into a monster. In the Three Kingdoms Beginners District, there was no one else who could reach this level except for Nanhua, Yu-ji, and Zhuxiai. Now that the black-haired gorilla was planning to evolve in front of Yi-chun, how could Yi-chun not satisfy it? Only when the black-haired gorilla evolved would Yi-chun be able to reap the greatest benefits. On the ground, the frightened black-haired gorilla looked at the huge pit and roared. "Hurry up and do it! Yi-chun, discover my plan." Chapter 463. After the black-haired gorilla finished roaring, it didn't even think about it before running away madly into the distance. At the same time, the beasts in the huge pit looked at each other. Their eyes were wide open in anger, and then they let out a deafening roar. Roar! 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 In the next second, the beasts started swearing. "Bastard black-haired gorilla, I'll be a fool if I believe you. I'll wait here for Yi-chun to kill us. Yes, we'll wait here to be shot to death. I won't believe a fool like you. When I go offline, I'll definitely go to your lair. If you're dead, then so be it. If you're not dead, then I'll pull out your tendons, peel your skin, and eat you little by little. Yi-chun, you must kill this bastard. Kill him, and you'll be our eternal friend." The beasts started swearing. They were angry and disgusted. Some even encouraged Yi-chun to kill the black-haired gorilla. Yi-chun, who was floating in the sky, raised his eyebrows when he heard this. He then pointed at the beasts in the huge pit. The 510,000 spears that were floating in the sky shook at the same time. Buzz! After the deafening buzzing sound, the 510,000 spears were instantly shot into the huge pit. In the next second, the sound of the spears penetrating the legs of the beasts was heard. Crack, crack, crack! All the beasts in the huge pit had their legs penetrated without exception. In the next second, miserable howls were heard from the huge pit. Ow, ow, chirp, chirp! The miserable howls of the demonic beasts were obviously different from before. In addition to the pain and fear, there was also a sense of unwillingness. That's right, unwillingness. The beasts were unreconciled, because they couldn't trick Yi-chun and make Yi-chun ignore them and chase after the black-haired gorilla. Originally, when the black-haired gorilla escaped, all the beasts had a glimmer of hope in their hearts. A glimmer of hope to survive. Because the black-haired gorilla had escaped, Yi-chun would definitely hunt it down. Moreover, he would definitely wait until the black-haired gorilla had successfully evolved before killing it. The demonic beasts were clear on this point, and they also understood it, because Yi Chun had already stated it clearly. Therefore, the demon beasts were cursing the black-haired gorilla and talking about this, and that just to mislead Yi Chun into thinking that they were willing to be shot to death by the soldiers of the Samsara Legion. Then, Yi Chun would ignore them and chase after the black-haired gorilla. This way, they would really have a chance to escape. After all, Yi Chun wasn't here. The Samsara Legion's soldiers alone wouldn't be able to break their legs. Therefore, they had a chance to escape, and the chances were very high. However, this was only possible if Yi Chun was in a hurry to chase after the black-haired gorillas and ignored them. However, the cruel reality told them one thing. Yi Chun, this bastard, was actually not in a hurry. Instead, he directly crippled them. Yi Chun glanced at the howling demonic beasts in the huge pit and curled his lips in disdain. Then, he looked at the Samsara Legion and shouted, "Leave no one alive. Don't leave a single one alive. Don't let anyone come close. Kill anyone who dares to come close." "Yes, Master." When the soldiers of the Samsara Legion heard this, they shouted in unison without any hesitation. Yi Chun nodded and then quickly flew in the direction of the black-haired gorilla. Yi Chun didn't chase after the black-haired gorilla immediately because the evolution wasn't completed in an instant, unless there was a reward from the system or a special item, such as a level-up scroll. Otherwise, the evolution was a process, and the time required for this process would continue to increase as the realm increased. It was precisely because Yi Chun knew the characteristics of the evolution that he didn't chase after the black-haired gorilla in a hurry. Moreover, no matter how fast the black-haired gorilla was, it couldn't be faster than Yi Chun. If Yi Chun wanted to catch up with the black-haired gorilla, it would only take a breath. Bang, bang, bang. The black-haired gorilla moved its two legs wildly and ran for its life. Its gorilla face was ferocious. It didn't expect that the demonic beasts in the huge pit would be such bastards. They abandoned it and used it as bait to lure Yi Chun to chase after them so that they could have a chance to survive. However, it couldn't refuse. It didn't want to die. It still wanted to evolve and ascend to the untainted land. It wanted to rely on the powerful figures of the demon clan in the untainted land and then improve its strength rapidly. Soon, it could completely surpass Yi Chun. At that time, it would go to the Samsara city in the real world, destroy it, and kill Yi Chun. Of course, it also had to find the demonic beasts here today and kill them one by one. Otherwise, it couldn't vent its hatred. Therefore, it fled, fleeing for its life. Boom! An even more powerful aura suddenly rose from the body of the black-haired gorilla. Feeling the change in its body, the black-haired gorilla was delighted. It was going to evolve. It was finally going to evolve. Just as the black-haired gorilla thought of this, it felt its scalp tingle, and a sense of extreme danger came instantly. Sensing the danger, the black-haired gorilla's beastly face suddenly became extremely distorted. Yi Chun had caught up to it. He was right above its head. It could feel it. Bang! After a loud noise, the black-haired gorilla stomped on the ground and stopped. In the next second, the black-haired gorilla looked up and stared at Yi Chun fiercely. "Yi Chun, do you dare to wait for me to advance? Then fight me fair and square, without weapons. Idiot, put away your childish tricks. Today, you will definitely die." Yi Chun laughed coldly when he heard this, before he opened his mouth to speak. Hearing this, the black-haired gorilla's beastly face became even more distorted. Its eyes were bloodshot at this moment. It was angry, it was hateful, and it was afraid. However, it was useless. Yi Chun was too strong. It couldn't escape at all, and it couldn't defeat Yi Chun. "I'm willing to exchange my treasure for my life. As long as you agree, I'll give you my treasure." The black-haired gorilla tried to calm its violently beating heart due to fear. Then, it looked at Yi Chun and roared in a deep voice. When Yi Chun heard this, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. "Treasure? Can you bring it into the game world?" Hearing this, the black-haired gorilla was overjoyed. It hurriedly nodded and shouted, "Yes, yes. Yi Chun, as long as you let me go, the treasure is yours." "Let you go? Impossible. However, I can leave you with an intact corpse." When Yi-Chen heard this, he curled his lips in disdain and said, "You." The black-haired gorilla was instantly enraged. Then it fell silent. When Yi-Chen saw this, he smiled coldly but did not continue to pay attention to this black-furred gorilla. This was because the black-haired gorilla was trying to stall for time. Yi-Chen could tell. However, Yi-Chen didn't care at all. Otherwise, Yi-Chen would have taken action long ago. There was no need to wait until now. As time passed, the aura of the black-haired gorilla grew stronger and stronger. When its aura reached its peak, the black-haired gorilla opened its eyes wide, and a look of ecstasy appeared on its face. It looked at Yi-Chen and shouted, "I agree." At this moment, a world announcement sounded. Ding! However, before the world announcement could be made, the black, thick Godslayer instantly pierced through the black-haired gorilla's head. Then, with a flash of black light, it directly devoured its soul. The next second, the world announcement officially sounded. Congratulations, shifter player Black-Haired, for being the first to evolve into a fairy. Special reward: Black-Haired innate attribute points x100, lucky draw x1, and innate skill Devour. The world announcement repeated 3 times. However, before the players could react, the world announcement sounded again. Ding! Congratulations, human player Yi-Chen, for being the first to kill a shifter. Special reward: Recruit Order, Heaven Grade, x10, Innate Attribute Points x50, and Purple Coins x100, 000,000. Chapter 464. As soon as the world announcement ended, the entire world channel erupted. F*CK. F*CK. This turn of events happened too quickly. I almost couldn't react in time. Haha, I was shocked when I heard that a demonic beast from the Demonic Beast clan had evolved into a demon. Luckily, Boss Yi-Chen killed that demon. Hehe, I was shocked just now too. If there really is a demonic beast evolving into a demon spirit, and it happens to be in the place where I am, then everyone here is going to be in trouble. F*CK, a demon spirit. Just think about it, and you know how terrifying it is. Terrifying my ass. No matter how terrifying it is, can it be more terrifying than Boss Yi-Chen? It's just a fairy. Don't forget that Boss Yi-Chen killed a lesser fairy. That one was definitely stronger than a fairy. That reminds me. F*CK. I didn't hear the world announcement about a Yao beast evolving into a lesser fairy. F*CK. I didn't hear about it either. Where did that lesser fairy come from? I don't know, but that's not important. Anyway, it was killed by Boss Yi-Chen. Haha, a human scum, don't be so arrogant. Your Grandpa Ox will evolve into a fairy soon. When the time comes, your Grandpa Ox will eat to his heart's content and eat all of you scum. Yi-Chen, aren't you the strongest of a human race? The werewolves also want to evolve into fairies. Come and kill them. The world is so big. No matter how powerful that bastard Yi-Chen is, he's just one person. Brothers of the Yao race, don't be afraid of him. As long as we continue to grow stronger, we will eat up the human race sooner or later. When the time comes, Yi-Chen will be a general without an army. No matter how strong he is, he won't be able to fight against us alone. Haha! Eat up a human race and kill Yi-Chen. Awoo! Scum of the Yao race, your human grandfathers and grandmothers will also become stronger. When the time comes, you will all be slaughtered, sliced, and cooked. Steaming, braising, barbecuing, all kinds of methods. Cooking is too monotonous. Not bad, not bad. That's a good idea. When we go offline later, let's form a team to kill the Yao race. After we kill a few, we'll have a meal together. Count me in. And me. The world channel was in an uproar. The demon race and the human race were cursing and mocking each other. Yi-Chen glanced at the world channel, which was constantly being updated, and raised his eyebrows. The demon clan and the human clan were irreconcilable. As long as they quarreled, countless people and demon beasts would join in. This could be seen from the crazily spammed world channel. However, the people who were cursing and mocking, whether they were humans or beasts, were not very strong. The truly strong basically did not participate in the discussions on the world channel. In fact, they did not even participate at all. Every expert knew what the basis of survival was. Every expert was fighting for survival, including Yi-chun. Even though Yi-chun was now standing at the peak of the real world, he did not relax at all. This was because Yi-chun knew better than anyone else what kind of world the Great Desolate World was. There were almighties everywhere, as well as experts for various worlds. It was simply wishful thinking for him to gain a foothold there with his current strength. Although Yi-chun had the Khanate Cardinal Treasure Godslayer, the Supreme Grade Khanate Numinous Treasure Fall Coin, the Fire Spirit Pearl, and the Cosmic Bow, all of which were extraordinary, Yi-chun would be lucky if he did not get killed when he encountered almighties in the Great Desolate World. As for those numinous treasures, they would definitely be snatched away. Therefore, Yi-chun had never slacked off, nor had he been arrogant. Not only that, but he had also been working hard in order to ascend to the untainted land. He had been working hard in order to rise quickly after ascending to the untainted land. The nature of the world was that the strong preyed on the weak and the survival of the fittest. Unfortunately, many people had neglected this point. If they had the time to quarrel, they would rather cultivate, fight monsters, and become stronger. Being strong was the foundation of survival. At this thought, Yi-chun stopped paying attention to the world channel and looked at the ground. To be precise, he was looking at the item dropped by the black-haired gorilla. It was a token that was constantly flashing with 7-colored light. It was also because of this item that Yi-chun did not pay attention to the World Channel's announcement of the reward. This was because there was only one explanation for the rainbow light. The item's grade was very high, or was extremely rare. What could this token be? Yi-chun glanced at the token that was flickering with a 7-colored light. He raised his hand and instantly grabbed the token. At this moment, the system notification sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi-chun for obtaining the Immortal City Advancement Token, Supreme, Unique. The moment the system notification ended, Yi-chun was stunned. Immortal City Advancement Token. Damn, what did this have to do with the Immortal City? The Immortal City was a special building that only appeared in the Great Desolate World. To be precise, it was a special building that appeared after the living beings of the Great Desolate World ascended. It had the functions of flying, spirit gathering, defense, attack, array formation, and so on. One could kill a boss to obtain the building blueprints and then build it on their own. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that the Immortal City was a special building that all the forces of the Great Desolate World would fight to build. Because the Immortal City could fly, it was very mobile. Compared to the headquarters built in caves, islands, mountains, and so on, the Immortal City was more mobile and safer. At this thought, Yi-chun hurriedly looked at the Immortal City Advancement Token's attributes. Immortal City Advancement Token, Supreme, Unique can be used on any city. After using it, the city will automatically be upgraded to an Immortal City and will automatically have all the abilities of an Immortal City. At the same time, it will gain the characteristic of unlimited growth. It can continue to grow with the increase of materials. There is no upper limit. Seeing this, Yi-chun's eyes widened. Damn! It could directly turn a city into an Immortal City, and it even had the characteristic of unlimited growth. Didn't this mean that if Samsara City used this, it would directly become an Immortal City? As long as there were enough materials, it could grow infinitely. In this case, there was no need to worry about what would happen after the whole country ascended to the Eldritch World. Yi-chun's goal was to ascend to the Eldritch World. When the time came, he would definitely bring all the people to the Eldritch World. However, there was a key point. Samsara City was only so big. Even if it eventually became an imperial city, it would not be able to accommodate all the people. In this way, after ascending to the Eldritch World, more than 90% of the people would be outside Samsara City. They would have no fixed residence and could be in danger at any time. And now, the appearance of the Immortal City Advancement Order had undoubtedly solved this problem for Yi-chun. As long as Yi-chun used the Immortal City Advancement Token on Samsara City, it would directly become an Immortal City and could grow infinitely. Of course, The premise was that Yi Chun had to continuously fill Samsara City with materials. As long as Yi Chun provided the materials, Samsara City could completely expand to cover the whole country. Then, when Yi Chun established the country, he would definitely be able to bring all the people into Samsara City and then ascend to the Eldritch world. There was no need to worry about the people being stranded outside. Of course, this was not the only benefit of the Immortal City Advancement Token. The key was the attributes of the Immortal City. Once Samsara City became an Immortal City, it would automatically have the ability to fly and gather spiritual energy. Moreover, its defensive capabilities would increase by hundreds or even thousands of times. Although it would not be as good as the Immortal City in the Eldritch world, it would be an impenetrable fortress in the beginner's area of the Three Kingdoms. This was naturally what Yi Chun wanted to see the most. After all, before Yi Chun established the country, most of the time, he would lead the army into battle. Moreover, the strength of the players was rapidly increasing. When the time came, if the players wanted to attack Yi Chun and Yi Chun was not in Samsara City, it would not be a good thing. Of course, Yi Chun had already taken precautions against this. For example, the Copper Sparrow Pavilion had the ability to stop war. Also, when Samsara City was attacked, Zhao Yu, Chan Wan, and the others could go directly to the real world and wake Yi Chun up. Then, Yi Chun would return to Samsara City in time. However, these were all bad ideas. The best choice was for Samsara City to become an impenetrable fortress. Of course, this was not the only benefit that the token brought to Yi Chun. Another benefit was that after Yi Chun ascended to the Eldritch world, he did not have to specially obtain construction blueprints to rebuild Samsara City and turn it into an immortal city. Moreover, even if he obtained the blueprints, the immortal city would be fixed. It would be as big as he wanted it to be. No matter how big it was, it would not be as big as the ability to expand infinitely. Thinking of this, Yi Chun could not help but laugh wildly at the sky. Awesome. Very awesome. Killing monsters to level up and get equipment is the most important thing. One of the players looked in the direction that Yi Chun left, then laughed and said, "Yes, not bad. It's lucky that we survived today without losing levels. Yes, I'll go elsewhere to kill monsters to level up. I'll go to." The players spoke one after another. Then, one by one, they left the battlefield in groups. They really wanted to snatch the items dropped by the monsters. This was because those items were clearly top-notch. Otherwise, how could they shine? Unfortunately, they did not dare to do so. Because of Yi Chun's words, they regained their rationality. In front of absolute strength, all of them combined were not enough to fill the gaps between Yi Chun's teeth. Rather than be killed, they might as well leave obediently. Three Kingdoms Beginners Region, Yuzhou Reincarnation Valley. Yi Chun flew over in the time it took to brew a cup of tea. When he arrived, he stopped. This was because outside the tall and majestic walls of the Reincarnation Valley, there was an old man standing upright. His hair was white, but he did not look weak at all. Not only that, but he also exuded a special aura. That aura was as sharp as the tip of a spear. A person with such an aura was definitely a martial arts expert. To have such an aura at such a young age. Just as Yi Chun thought of this, the soldiers on the walls of the Reincarnation Valley all knelt on one knee. Then, they bowed respectfully to Yi Chun in a loud voice. "Greetings, Lord." When Yi Chun heard this, he immediately returned to his senses and nodded at the soldiers on the walls. At the city gate, Zhou Tsang, who was receiving the old man, hurriedly raised his head when he heard this. Then, he knelt on one knee and bowed loudly to Yi Chun. "Greetings, Lord." Yi Chun nodded with a smile. Just as he was about to ask, the white-haired old man bowed to Yi Chun and said, "Tong Yuan of Jingzhou, Tong Xiongfu, greets the great general of agile cavalry." Chapter 466. Yi Chun was stunned when he heard this. Then his eyes widened. Damn it, It was Zhao Yun's master, Tong Yuan. Why did he come here himself? The moment Yi Qin's doubts appeared, he immediately thought of something. Half a month ago, when Zhao Yun was talking to Yi Qin, he mentioned that he wanted his master, Tong Yuan, to settle down in Samsara City. However, Tong Yuan was obsessed with martial arts and did not like to fight. He hoped that Yi Qin would allow him to do so. Yi Qin agreed without hesitation. Although the strength of the soldiers in Samsara City was increasing, they did not have many offensive skills. Tong Yuan could make up for this gap. After all, Tong Yuan was a spear master. He could easily teach the soldiers in Samsara City, and their combat strength would soar. Of course, Tong Yuan, a spear master, could not be compared to Yi Qin's spear skills. Otherwise, Yi Qin would not have been given the title of spear god. In terms of spear skills, Yi Qin was undoubtedly the best in the world. However, Yi Qin could not teach his spear skills to the soldiers. If he wanted to teach, he had to take in a disciple. This was the rule of the game world. However, Yi Qin did not want to take in a disciple casually. After taking in a disciple, the luck of the master and the disciple would be connected. If something went wrong, Yi Qin would be affected. Therefore, Yi Qin would not take in a disciple casually. He had never thought about it. Now that Tong Yuan was here, how could Yi Qin not be happy? Thinking of this, Yi Qin smiled and nodded. Then, he flew to the ground. When Yi Qin landed on the ground, Tong Yuan bowed solemnly once again. Tong Yuan of Jing Province, Tong Xiongfu, begs the general of Agile Cavalry to take me in. As soon as Tong Yuan finished his words, the system beeped. Ding! The superclass historical General Tong Yuan wants to recognize you as his master. Do you accept? Yi Qin was overjoyed when he heard the system notification. He hurriedly stepped forward and helped Tong Yuan up. Then, he said solemnly, Samsara City is lucky to have Xiongfu's help. Tong Yuan's eyes lit up when he heard this. He quickly bowed again and said, Tong Yuan of Jing Province, Tong Xiongfu. Greetings, my lord. In fact, Tong Yuan was hesitant when he received Zhao Yun's letter. In Zhao Yunjing's letter, he had only told him that the environment in Samsara City was excellent, and the spiritual qi of heaven and earth was rich. He could cultivate with half the effort and twice the result. However, he was here to work for Yi Qin. To be more precise, he was helping Yi Qin train the soldiers of Samsara City and teaching them spear techniques. To Tong Yuan, who was obsessed with martial arts, this was no different from a difficult choice. Perhaps it was because the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in Samsara City was so dense that it was beneficial for cultivation. He didn't want to come because he had to work for Yi Qin and train the soldiers. Of course, he could accept training the soldiers, but he was worried that Yi Qin would send him to the battlefield. Although he was not afraid of going to the battlefield, he had no interest in it. At that time, if Yi Qin really asked him to go to the battlefield and he refused, it would definitely make Yi Qin unhappy. Moreover, it would also implicate Zhao Yunjing. This was not something he wanted to see. But after a while, he still couldn't forget about the rich spiritual qi in Samsara City. So he finally decided to come to Samsara City. If Yi Qin really sent him to the battlefield, he would agree and leave Samsara City after 3 times. In this way, he wouldn't embarrass Yi Qin and wouldn't put his disciple Zhao Yun in a difficult position. But he didn't expect to see Yi Qin flying towards him as soon as he arrived in Samsara City. To Tong Yuan, this was no different from a huge blow. He was obsessed with martial arts because he wanted to ascend. But now, in this world where it was difficult to ascend, there was someone who could fly. And this person was none other than the master of Samsara City, Yi Qin, whom he wanted to seek refuge from. To Tong Yuan, this was a huge blow to him. One had to know that only those who had ascended could fly in the sky. Tong Yuan was very clear about this. Although Tong Yuan didn't understand why Yi Qin stayed in this world when he could fly, it didn't stop him from being excited. Because if he sought refuge with Yi Qin, he would definitely be able to receive guidance from Yi Qin and ascend. This was the reason why Tong Yuan recognized Yi Qin as his master without hesitation. Even if Yi Qin sent him to the battlefield, he wouldn't refuse. This was what Tong Yuan was thinking, because once Yi Chun instructed him, it would be no different from a master teaching his disciple. In this era, respect for one's master was deeply engraved in everyone's bones. And because of this, Tong Yuan gave up his stubbornness completely. No matter what Yi Chun asked him to do, he would be willing to do it, because he wanted to receive guidance from Yi Chun. But what he didn't know was that as long as he joined Samsara City, he would be able to follow Yi Chun and ascend together. Unfortunately, Zhao Yun didn't tell him this. Of course, this wasn't important. What was important was that Tong Yuan was wholeheartedly seeking refuge with Yi Chun. Yi Chun looked at the excited Tong Yuan and smiled. Just then, a world announcement sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for being the 5th person to obtain the loyalty of a superclass historical general, Tong Yuan. Player Yi Chun is rewarded with 10 million taels of gold. The world announcement was repeated 3 times, and it caused an uproar in the world channel. F***CK. Am I seeing things? Didn't Yi Chun just kill a fairy? How did he recruit Tong Yuan in the blink of an eye? Is Tong Yuan beside Yi Chun? Or did Yi Chun save Tong Yuan? Mother Kerr, that's not important. What's important is that Tong Yuan is a superclass historical general. More importantly, Tong Yuan is Zhao Yunjing's master. Mother Kerr, are you kidding me? How had he taken Tong Yuan? Mother Kerr, there are already 5 historical superclass generals. Yi Chun is going to soar. Haha. Yi Chun is awesome. And let me tell you, Yi Chun can really fly. I saw it with my own eyes. F***CK. How is that possible? Yi Chun can fly? I won't believe it, even if you beat me to death. F***CK. This is the truth. Believe it or not, Boss Yi Chun can fly. It's true. I saw it too. Just a moment ago. I saw it too. F***CK. If Yi Chun can fly, doesn't that mean that Yi Chun has become an immortal? I don't know if Yi Chun has become an immortal, but Boss Yi Chun's strength and ability are no different from an immortal's. I saw Boss Yi Chun point his sword and a huge golden disc appeared. There are also words on it. What was it called? I don't know. Haha, I don't know either. But that's not a problem at all. When I think of that scene, I'm still shocked. More than 500,000 spears flew up and revolved around Boss Yi Chun. I'll ask you guys one question. Are you convinced? Haha, it looks like it's true. That's great. This way, I can keep getting stronger and become an immortal. Dream on. I'll be an immortal first. Stand back. F***CKU. The world channel became lively because Yi Chun had subdued Tong Yuan. But soon, it became lively because someone mentioned that Yi Chun could fly and had mastered powerful spells. In the past, the players guessed that if they continued to play the game and became stronger, they might be able to fly and become an immortal. And now, the various extraordinary means that Yi Chun had displayed had undoubtedly confirmed their guesses. Hence, the players started to get excited and couldn't help but express the joy in their hearts. Even though this possibility was still far away for them, and they didn't even know if they could survive until then, it didn't affect the excitement in their hearts. Becoming an immortal was everyone's dream. Even before the meteor fell, it was no exception. Of course, at that time, people couldn't think about it every day. Most of them would think about it at some point and then hide it, because it was unrealistic, but that didn't stop people from wanting it. And now, the chance to become a god or an immortal was right in front of everyone. How could they not be excited? How could they not be excited? Yi Chun glanced at the noisy world channel and couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. The players were excited because they saw the possibility of immortality. But in reality, immortality wasn't easy. Even if one became an immortal, one wouldn't be immortal. That was because there was still the immeasurable calamity. Once the calamity appeared, even Daoyuo Jingxian could die, let alone immortality. There is only one way to become immortal, and that was to prove one's Dao. Chapter 467. Thinking of this, Yi Chun let out a long breath. He then looked at Tong Yuan and said, Yunzheng once mentioned something to me. You don't like fighting, so from now on, your job is to train the spear skills of the Samsara City soldiers. Are you willing? Tong Yuan was stunned when he heard this. He had never expected that Yi Chan would agree to let him stay out of the battlefield. To him, this was an extremely joyous matter. Thinking of this, Tong Yuan happily bowed and said, "Your Highness, I'm willing." "Very good. However, there is one thing that I must tell you beforehand. You are obsessed with martial arts. This is not wrong. It is also not wrong that you desire to ascend. However, do you know what the world will be like after you ascend?" Yi Chen chuckled and nodded when he heard this. Obviously, Yi Chen knew what Tong Yuan was thinking. Otherwise, he would not have said this. Tong Yuan was stunned when he heard this. Naturally, he could tell that Yi Chen had guessed what he was thinking. However, he didn't expect Yi Chen to ask him what the world was like after he ascended. This was a little out of his expectations. Tong Yuan said subconsciously, "Your Highness, the world will be very beautiful." "My lord, the world after ascension should be very beautiful, right? Carefree and unfettered, immortal." Yi Chen sighed helplessly and said, "No, you're wrong. I can tell you clearly that the world after you ascend is very cruel. It's even crueler than the human world. There are no humans there. The ones who rule the world are the shaman tribe and the demon tribe. Both of them are very powerful. Humans are like ants in front of them. Moreover, the demon tribe likes to eat humans the most." In fact, Yi Chen did not say everything. At this moment, the dragon tribe, the phoenix tribe, and the Kylan tribe were in control of the world. To be precise, the untainted land was in the first tribulation of the Long Han era. Yi Chen was not sure if he would be able to catch up with the first tribulation of the Long Han era after he ascended. That was why Yi Chen did not say that the three tribes were in control of the world. However, this was not important. What was important was that Tong Yuan was stunned when he heard Yi Chen's words. Then he shouted in shock, How is this possible? You think I'm lying to you?" Yi Chen couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. In fact, Yi Chen knew that Tong Yuan was just expressing his feelings. He didn't really doubt Yi Chen, but he was completely shocked by the news and reacted subconsciously. Otherwise, Yi Chen wouldn't be laughing. Yi Chen told Tong Yuan all this in advance because he wanted Tong Yuan to be mentally prepared. After he ascended to the untainted land, Tong Yuan would be the first person to take part in the defense against the demon tribe. He did not want Tong Yuan to be shocked and disbelieved. He did not want Tong Yuan to be crippled. This was a mental problem. Generals had strong wills, but they could also be greatly stimulated by certain things. After all, Tong Yuan had been thinking about the world after he ascended for at least 30 years. This was almost an obsession. It was also because of this that Yi Chen had warned Tong Yuan in advance. Yi Chen didn't want his subordinates to be crippled after he ascended to the untainted land. When Tong Yuan heard this, he came back to his senses and hurriedly bowed. "My lord, I don't dare. I just can't believe—" "No." Tong Yuan's words became incoherent as he spoke. Obviously, he felt that his words could be easily misunderstood by Yi Chen. He didn't know how to continue. Tong Yuan originally thought that the world after he ascended would be beautiful. However, Yi Chen's words undoubtedly told him one thing. The world after he ascended was not only not beautiful, but also cruel. It was even crueler than the chaotic world in the human world. It could be said that this had completely shattered his decades of dream. The shock of breaking his dream was so great that it was no wonder that he couldn't make sense of his words. Yi Chen looked at Tong Yuan, who was in a dilemma and couldn't speak clearly. He couldn't help smiling and said, "Don't worry. I understand what you mean. I'm telling you this because I want you to understand one thing. The so-called freedom and immortality can't be obtained by ascending to the untainted land. If you want to be truly free and immortal, you have to work hard to fight for it. More accurately, the human race has to constantly strive for self-improvement. Only when the human race completely controls the heavens and earth will we be truly free and immortal. Do you understand? My lord, I'm willing to follow you into battle to kill the enemy. Please give me your orders." When Tong Yuan heard this, he took a deep breath and exhaled deeply. He then bowed solemnly. Obviously, because of Yi Chen, Tong Yuan had reshaped his life, or rather, his will. Otherwise, Tong Yuan wouldn't be showing off his abilities at this moment. In fact, Tong Yuan was already certain of one thing. Yi Chen was going to ascend to the untainted land. The reason was very simple. Yi Chen was already able to fly and could ascend to the untainted land. However, in the end, Yi Chen was still in the human world as the cavalry general of the Great Han Empire. He was still recruiting talents. In addition, Yi Chen had told Tong Yuan about the world after ascending to the untainted land. All of these told Tong Yuan that Yi Chen was really going to ascend to the untainted land. Tong Yuan had only heard of one way to ascend to the untainted land: a god-level village creation token. As long as the lord of the territory built by a god-level village creation token unified the world, he could ascend to the untainted land. When he thought of what Zhao Yun had said in the letter about the rich spiritual qi of heaven and earth in Samsara City, everything made sense. Samsara City was built by a god-level village creation token. Moreover, the lord of Samsara City, Yi Chen, was really planning to ascend to the untainted land. It was because he had guessed this and understood what kind of world he would be in after ascending to the untainted land that Tong Yuan gave up his previous stubbornness and was willing to go to the battlefield for Yi Chen. When Yi Chen heard Tong Yuan's words, he glanced at Tong Yuan, who was showing off his abilities, and couldn't help but smile. He said, "You can stay in Samsara City and teach the soldiers spear skills. After ascending to the untainted land, even if you don't want to go to the battlefield, I will let you go. Tong Yuan swears to follow you until death. If I violate this oath, may the heavens and earth destroy me." When Tong Yuan heard this, he felt a warmth in his heart. With a bang, he knelt down on one knee and bowed solemnly. How could Tong Yuan not understand Yi Chen's intention to take care of him? It was precisely because of this that Tong Yuan was moved from the bottom of his heart. It was also because of this that Tong Yuan did not hesitate to swear an oath to follow Yi Chen to death. As soon as Tong Yuan finished his words, the system beeped. Ding! Tong Yuan's loyalty plus 10 upgraded to loyal. After hearing the system beep, Yi Chen raised his eyebrows. Putting himself in Tong Yuan's shoes in exchange for loyal. Not bad, not bad. At this thought, Yi Chen helped Tong Yuan up with a smile and said, "Follow me into the city and witness a miracle with me." Chapter 468. Tong Yuan was taken aback when he heard this. He quickly bowed and said, "Yes, my lord." Tong Yuan didn't know what miracle Yi Chen was talking about, but this didn't stop him from being curious. Yi Chen chuckled and nodded. He then looked at Zhou Tsang and said, "Zhou Tsang, come along too." "Yes, my lord." Zhou Tsang was overjoyed when he heard this. He quickly bowed and followed Yi Chen to the gates of the Reincarnation Valley with Tong Yuan. When the soldiers on the city wall saw this, they quickly signaled to the soldiers at the city gates. In the next second, the huge city gates slowly opened with creaking sounds. When Yi Chen arrived at the city gates were completely open. "Greetings, my lord." The soldiers who were responsible for opening and closing the city gates shouted in unison. Yi Chen chuckled and nodded. He then led Tong Yuan and Zhou Tsang towards the Reincarnation Valley. At this moment, the Reincarnation Valley was like a paradise. It was so quiet and peaceful that one couldn't see any trace of war. Yi Chen couldn't help but smile when he heard the chirping of the birds, smelled the refreshing fragrance of the flowers, and looked at the picturesque wheat fields on both sides of the road. He had made the right choice when he chose this place to build the Reincarnation City. Just as Yi Chen thought of this, the sound of joyful play came from the forest in the distance. It was the sound of a group of children. It was obvious that the children were playing in the forest. Yi Chen smiled again when he heard the children's heartfelt joy. At this moment, a joyful cry was heard. "Ah, it's the Grand Lord." Where? "Look, it's our Grand Lord." "Ah, it's really the Grand Lord." In the next second, a group of over 1,000 children ran towards Yi Chen with a whoosh sound. "My lord." Zhou Tsang couldn't help but look at Yi Chen and ask. There were too many children, and they were very naughty. Zhou was worried that some naughty child would appear among these children and annoy Yi-chun. That would be bad, so he wanted to ask Yi-chun if he should chase these children away or forbid them from coming close. However, before he could finish speaking, Yi-chun raised his hand and interrupted him. It doesn't matter. These children are the future of Samsara City, and they are all innocent. Even if there are a few naughty ones, you don't have to care. Yi-chun naturally knew what Zhou meant. However, Zhou concerns were clearly unnecessary. This was the three kingdoms. The hearts of the people were simple. The hearts of the children were even purer. There would definitely be naughty children, but their hearts were pure. Of course, these children would never misbehave in front of Yi-chun. Yi-chun was 100% sure of this. Moreover, from the children's surprised cheers, he could tell what they were thinking. They wanted to meet Yi-chun and see the Lord of Samsara City, who had given them a happy life. They wanted to express their respect and admiration. This was almost the same as the real world, where hardcore fans met a star before a meteor fell from the sky. After hearing Yi-chun's words, Zhou was slightly stunned. Then he nodded and bowed. "Yes, my lord." Soon, the children ran up to Yi-chun and looked at him excitedly. Then, they imitated the adults and bowed to Yi-chun, saying, "Brother Yi-chun, please forgive me." "Greetings, my lord." Thousands of children shouted in unison. Although they were very young, their voices were very loud and clear. When Yi-chun heard this, he could not help but smile and asked, "What were you playing in the woods just now? You seem to be very happy." Yi-chun was cold, domineering, and even barbaric to outsiders. However, he treated the people in his territory with a completely different attitude. As for the children in his territory, Yi-chun was even more kind. Hearing Yi-chun's words, which were like that of a big brother next door, the children, who were still a little nervous, suddenly relaxed and laughed. Just as Yi-chun was puzzled, a slightly older child opened his mouth and said, "That's right. My lord, we were listening to Grandpa Yonglu tell jokes in the woods." "Yes, my lord. Grandpa Yonglu tells us jokes every day. His eyebrows are so long, just like the willow." Yes, Grandpa Yonglu seems to give us a lot of delicious food." The children talked about Grandpa Yonglu in the woods one after another. The more Yi-chun listened, the more he felt that something was wrong. The more he listened, the more he felt that it was strange. When did such a person come from Samsara City? His eyebrows are as long as the willow. Isn't this a joke? How long does he have to live? Thinking of this, Yi-chun was stunned. Then he opened his eyes and released his divine sense, which covered the entire Samsara Valley. The next second, there was a loud laugh. "Ha ha ha, little doll. Don't show off in front of this old man with your meager skills. Damn it, is it really?" Thinking of this, Yi-chun was suddenly stunned. Yi-chun was reborn. If he still couldn't determine who the existence in the woods was, then he would have been reborn in vain. It was also because he confirmed the identity of the Grandpa Yonglu in the woods that Yi-chun was dumbfounded. Because this was the beginner's area of the three kingdoms. Not to mention ordinary existences, even sages could not come down. Moreover, there were no sages in the Eldritch world at this time. Even Hong Jun had not proven his Tao. But now the situation was that the space demon god, Yang Mei, who was more powerful than Hong Jun, had come to the beginner's area of the three kingdoms. To be precise, he had come to Yi-chun's territory, the Samsara Valley. And it seemed that he had been here for more than a day. Yang Mei was indeed a chaos demon god and controlled the origin of space. But he could not violate the rules of the system and directly come down to the lower realm. Moreover, he should have sealed himself. If the sages did not come out, the seal would not be broken. But the sages had not come out yet. How did he come out? Wait! The special building in Samsara City, the recruitment hall. Recruitment hall, unique after construction, it can be used once a month. Every time one person appears, they will automatically join the territory. The probability of ordinary historical figures appearing is 80%. The probability of third-rate historical figures appearing is 60%. The probability of second-rate historical figures appearing is 30%. The probability of first-rate historical figures appearing is 10%. The probability of super first-rate historical figures appearing is 1%. The probability of special characters appearing is 0. 1%. Damn it. That's right. The recruitment hall must have brought Yang Mei here. Just as Yi Chen thought of this, the children found that Yi Chen's expression was not right, and then they shouted one by one. Ah, Grandpa Yang Lu didn't just say us, but the Lord? It must be. Didn't you see that the Lord was in a daze? Humph. I'll ignore Grandpa Yang Lu in the future. He was disrespectful to the Lord. Well, I'll ignore him too. The children's little faces suddenly became tense, and they shouted angrily. Yi Chen heard this, and the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch, but he did not say anything. Children's words carried no harm, and Yi Chen did not think that the person in the forest would care about the children's words. Thinking of this, Yi Chen took a deep breath, and after a long exhalation, he bowed to the forest and said, Yi Chen greets Yang Mei, immortal. Chapter 469. As soon as Yi Chen finished speaking, a white-haired old man with extremely long eyebrows appeared beside Yi Chen out of thin air. The moment Yi Chen saw him, he was even more certain of the old man's identity. Aside from the legendary great immortal Yang Mei, one of the 3,000 primal chaos god fiends, or rather, the giant hollow weeping willow in the primal chaos, it could not be anyone else. Kid, aren't you afraid of me? Yang Mei immortal glanced at Yi Chen and asked with some surprise. When Yi Chen heard this, he immediately smiled and said, Why should I be afraid? Yi Chen really wasn't afraid that Yang Mei immortal would attack him because he didn't have any hostility. Moreover, Yi Chen was the owner of the recruitment pavilion. Although the recruitment pavilion was just a building, the attributes it contained were given by the intelligence brain, Pangu. No one could violate it. Even Yang Mei immortal, a chaos demon god, was no exception. To be precise, the recruitment pavilion recruited people who wanted to follow Yi Chen, not people who wanted to kill Yi Chen. If one wanted to kill someone, the recruitment pavilion wouldn't summon them at all. Even if they wanted to kill someone after being summoned, the recruitment pavilion would immediately teleport the summoned person back. Therefore, Yi Chen wasn't worried that this legendary chaos demon god would cause any trouble. Ha ha ha. Interesting, interesting. Yang Mei immortal heard this and suddenly laughed. However, before he finished speaking, he was interrupted. Grandpa Yang Lu, why are you being disrespectful to the Lord? It doesn't like Grandpa Yang Lu anymore. A childish reprimand was heard at this moment. When Yang Mei immortal heard this, he couldn't help but be stunned. Then, he looked at the little girl who spoke and asked with a helpless expression, Your feudal lord is much, much younger than Grandpa Yang Lu. Can't Grandpa Yang Lu call your feudal lord a little doll? When the little girl heard this, she suddenly didn't know how to answer. The other children looked at each other. Although they wanted to refute, they felt that what Yang Mei immortal said was right. When Yi Chen saw this, he couldn't help but smile. Grandpa Yang Lu is right. He's much older than me. It's not wrong to call me a little kid. All right, let's go back to the city and find Grandpa Kai to learn how to read. When the children heard this, they looked at each other and nodded in unison. Yes, Sir Overlord. After saying that, they bowed to Yang Mei Great Immortal and said, Grandpa Yang Lu, I'm sorry. We wronged you. When Yang Mei Immortal heard this, he stroked his white beard with a smile, and then said with a gentle face, Don't worry. Grandpa Yang Lu has forgiven you. Go back and study. When the children heard this, they immediately smiled and replied in unison, yes. After that, they walked towards Samsara City together. After the children left, Yi Chen looked directly at Zhou Cong and Tong Yuan, who were both puzzled and shocked. You two returned to the city first. Yes, my lord. When Zhou Cong and Tong Yuan heard this, they hesitated for a moment and then bowed in unison. They hesitated because they were worried that Yi Chen would be in danger. After all, those who could be called great immortals by Yi Chen were definitely very powerful. They could even be real immortals. However, they couldn't disobey Yi Chen's order. Moreover, They didn't dare to stay here without permission. After all, Yi Chen's order was to talk to Yang, make Great Immortal alone. Although they were all generals, they still had the ability to judge. When Zhou Cang and Tong Yuan left, Yi Chen looked at Yang Mei Great Immortal and asked, "What brings Yang Mei Great Immortal here?" Yang Mei Great Immortal was one of the 3,000 chaos demons. Yi Chen didn't believe that the characteristics of the recruitment pavilion could forcibly recruit him. However, the fact was that Yang Mei Great Immortal had appeared here. Therefore, the result was obvious. Yang Mei Great Immortal had done this on purpose. However, Yi Chen didn't know why Yang Mei Great Immortal had come here. Of course, for Yi Chen, no matter what Yang Mei Great Immortal's purpose was, as long as Yi Chen felt that his interests would be damaged or that there would be any danger, he would definitely not agree. Yang Mei Great Immortal glanced at Yi Chen, who was extremely calm, and nodded approvingly. Then he said, "Little kid, you are an anomaly. Little doll, you are indeed an anomaly. It seems that the results of my divination were not wrong." When Yi Chen heard this, his heart couldn't help but thump. However, his expression didn't change at all. After a moment of silence, Yi Chen looked at Yang Mei Great Immortal and said, "Yang Mei Great Immortal, if you have something to say, please say it." Yang Mei Great Immortal glanced at Yi Chen and said, "Of the 50 Great Immortals, 49 have escaped. I do have something to ask of you." When Yi Chen heard this, he nodded and said, "Please go ahead. Back then, when Pangu opened the sky, I was lucky enough to escape. However, in order to change my fate, I specially sealed myself and made a great vow. If a saint didn't appear, the seal wouldn't be broken. However, the river of fate would be extremely difficult to break." When Yi Chen heard this, he frowned, but he didn't say anything. He continued to wait for the rest of the sentence. Yang Mei Great Immortal sighed, and then continued, "Life is unpredictable. I tried my best to change my fate, but I found that the future was becoming more and more chaotic and unknown. In the dark, I felt an extremely weak summoning power, and this power could actually break the restrictions of the Great Immortals. Therefore, I hurriedly created a clone and followed this power here. It wasn't until I met you that I realized that the opportunity one was looking for was in you." When Yang Mei Great Immortal said this, the originally cloudless sky suddenly turned scarlet like blood. At the same time, a giant eye full of desolation, chaos, and a strong aura of destruction suddenly appeared in the sky. Seeing the change in the sky, Yi Chen's eyes suddenly shrank. F*CK, divine punishment. When Yang Mei Great Immortal saw this, his old face suddenly twisted. Without thinking, he directly looked at Yi Chen and said, "I'll give you a gift. In the future, I'll help you." Boom! Boom! A thunderous roar that shook the myriad worlds suddenly rang out. In the next second, the giant eye in the sky slowly opened. When Yang Mei Great Immortal saw this, his expression suddenly changed. He looked deeply at Yi Chen and then disappeared. Yang Mei Great Immortal didn't say anything and directly left the novice area of the Three Kingdoms. The giant eye in the sky also disappeared at this moment, as if everything just now was an illusion. Yi Chen looked at the place where Yang Mei Great Immortal disappeared and suddenly frowned. He left, but he still left something behind. Why did he insist on being associated with me? Logically speaking, this guy should be able to live. Why did he risk being struck to death by divine punishment to come down and ask me for help? Yang Mei Great Immortal was one of the 3,000 chaos demon gods. He was originally destined to die, but in the end, he survived. However, in order to survive, he had to seal himself. Moreover, the seal could only be lifted after a saint appeared in the world. Yi Chen clearly remembered that when he ascended to the primordial world in his previous life, Hong Jun had just become a saint. At that time, Yang Mei Great Immortal had also lifted his seal and officially appeared in the world. Then, he ruthlessly taught Hong Jun a lesson. For this, the system specially created a super awesome historical plot to encourage players to participate. Unfortunately, no player dared to participate. One had to know that after ascending, the players would do the same thing every day. They would die and revive and repeat the same thing over and over again. In the end, they would die completely after dying 10 times. Therefore, no one dared to play around with their lives. After all, this was a battle between two saints. How could ants participate? Of course, this was not important. What was important was that young Mei, great immortal, who could have lived, actually ran to Yi Chun and asked him for help. More accurately, he asked Yi Chun for help to jump out of the river of fate and change the outcome of his death. How could Yi Chun not find this strange? Wait, this young Mei, great immortal will be awesome in the future, but he is not awesome now, damn. Isn't this giving me benefits for free? Thinking of this, Yi Chun's eyes suddenly lit up. Without thinking, he directly walked to the place where young Mei, great immortal, had disappeared and raised his hand. An ordinary-looking stone, as small as a grain of rice, suddenly appeared in Yi Chun's hand. At this moment, the system's notification sound rang out. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for obtaining the space origin. As soon as the system's notification sound ended, Yi Chun's eyes lit up. Damn! This time, he really got a great deal. Chapter 470. How could Yi Chun not know what the origin of space was? It was one of the 3,000 great Taoists, the foundation of the great Tao of space. After mastering it, he would definitely become a sage. Of course, this would take time. After all, the origin was the origin, and the Tao validation was the Tao validation. The two could not be compared. Yi Chun's goal was to validate the Tao through strength. This had never changed. After all, Yi Chun cultivated the 9 revolutions mysterious technique, which was the path of validating the Tao through strength. Moreover, in validating the Tao and becoming a sage, validating the Tao through strength was the most difficult. However, after succeeding, one would be the most powerful and could directly challenge the heavenly Tao. Yi Chun had been reborn. How could he not want to be the strongest existence? Of course, this was not important. What was important was that at this moment, Yi Chun did not mind mastering one more ability. Among the 3,000 great Taoists, time was king and space was supreme. Time and space were the two most difficult to control. Even Hong Jun, who had reached the Tao integration stage in the future, had only grasped the surface. Otherwise, how could he have been severely punished by Yang Mei after the seal was lifted? Now, Yi Chun had directly obtained the origin of space. If he wanted to control the great Tao of space, it was very simple. As long as he refined the origin of space, success would follow naturally. This was the fundamental reason why Yi Chun was ecstatic. Damn, when luck came, there was no stopping it. Thinking of this, Yi Chun could not help but laugh wildly. Originally, Yi Chun had only returned to Samsara City to use the Immortal City promotion order to upgrade Samsara City to an Immortal City. However, who would have thought that he would meet Yang Mei, who wanted to break free from the river of fate? Of course, this was not important. What was important was that Yang Mei did not know that he could jump out of the river of fate on his own. However, in the end, she had given the origin of space, which was comparable to a chaos supreme treasure, to Yi Chun. This was naturally a joyous occasion for Yi Chun. It was no different from a chaos supreme treasure falling from the sky. It was also because of this that Yi Chun felt so carefree and comfortable at the moment. Of course, after Yi Chun ascended to the untainted land, he would definitely help great immortal Yang Mei jump out of the river of destiny. However, this help required too little from Yi Chun. Not bad, not bad. This great immortal Yang Mei is really a good person. Thinking of this, the corners of Yi Chun's mouth curled up. With a thought, 100 enlightenment stones instantly appeared. Yi Chun glanced at it and raised his eyebrows. Then, he chose to use it without hesitation. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for using the Enlightenment Stone. Enlightenment mode activated. Duration, 100 minutes. The moment the system notification ended, Yi Chun's entire aura changed. He no longer had his usual domineering and cold aura. Instead, he became more natural, easygoing, and even more mysterious. Yi Chen's goal in using the Tao Comprehension Stone was very simple. He wanted to fully refine the space origin source. Others might not know what the origin source was, but how could Yi Chen not know? The origin source of every kind of power represented the foundation of the great Tao it belonged to. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that the origin source, which could be called a chaos treasure, had a lot of restrictions. To be precise, if Yi Chen chose to refine the space origin source, he could not refine it all at once. There would only be one result. He was destined to have no fate with the space origin source. Then, there was no then. Even if he obtained the space origin source, he would not be able to control it. In Lin Fan's previous life, there was a super lucky human player who unexpectedly obtained the wind origin source. Moreover, he obtained more than one piece. However, this guy did not make any preparations and directly refined it. Then he cried. He cried so miserably that he went crazy in the end. As for the reason, it was that the wind origin source could only be refined once. The amount of success was the same. If he wanted to continue, he could forget about it. This was the restriction of the great Tao. Refining the origin source was a shortcut. If everyone could take shortcuts, then what was the use of the great Tao? What was the use of the heavenly Tao? In fact, it was not just the players. Even someone as strong as Hong Jun had this restriction. One had to know that Hong Jun was protected by the heavenly Tao. It was too easy for him to find the space origin source. Unfortunately, he only managed to refine a little bit of it. Otherwise, how could Hong Jun have been taught a lesson by great immortal Yang Mei? It was also because Yi Chen knew the characteristics of the origin source that he did not hesitate to choose the Enlightenment Stone, a heaven-defying treasure that was completely cheating. For Yi Chen, it would be foolish not to refine the space origin source in one go. It would be too king wasteful. Of course, this also depended on luck. Even with the help of the Enlightenment Stone, Yi Chen might not be able to completely refine the space origin source. However, Yi Chen would still make the necessary preparations. Thinking of this, Yi Chen opened his mouth and swallowed the space origin source without hesitation. In the next second, an inexplicable wave suddenly appeared from Yi Chen's body. One wave after another, wave after wave. At the same time, the mysterious sound of the great Tao rang out. Time passed little by little. Under the support of the Enlightenment mode, the space origin source was constantly being refined by Yi Chen. Gradually, the space around Yi Chen began to distort and distort again and again. When the space was distorted to the extreme, the sound of glass shattering could be heard. Whoosh, whoosh, dozens of palm-sized black holes suddenly appeared around Yi Chen. Inside the black holes, it was extremely dark. There was no light at all. Not only that, but a tyrannical devouring force appeared around Yi Chen. At this moment, the earth also trembled a few times. The soil and stones around Yi Chen instantly flew up and rushed toward the black holes. If anyone saw this scene, they would definitely be scared out of their wits. Damn, the legendary black holes actually appeared. This was the rhythm of destruction. However, Yi Chen, who was refining the space origin source with his eyes closed, did not notice these changes at all. To be precise, Yi Chen was not affected by the changes in the surrounding space at all. However, the changes came and went quickly. The black holes that had just displayed a tyrannical devouring force were suddenly wiped out by a tyrannical force. The black holes disappeared instantly, and the devouring force also dissipated. At this moment, the system's notification rang out. Ding! Warning player Yi Chen. The Three Kingdoms beginner's area prohibits the use of destructive forces. If you continue, player Yi Chen will be punished by the heavens. The system's notification instantly woke up Yi Chen, who was refining the space origin source. The moment he opened his eyes, Yi Chen could not help but be stunned. Damn, when did I use a force that could destroy the world? Could it be? Thinking of this, Yi Chen's mouth could not help but twitch. F***CK. Luckily, I used the Tao Comprehension Stone and entered the Tao Comprehension mode. Otherwise, this bullish asterisk T-like system notification would have ruined my fortuitous encounter. Thinking of this, Yi-chun, who was still in enlightenment mode, continued to refine the space origin source while doing his best to control the power of space. For Yi-chun, at this moment, the most important thing was to refine the space origin source. Other than that, everything else had to wait. Of course, Yi-chun did not want to be attacked by the heavens. Otherwise, even if Yi-chun used a connate cardinal treasure or a connate spiritual treasure, he would not be able to withstand the heavens. Just look at great immortal Yangmei. Even someone as tyrannical as him had to run away when the heavens struck. Time passed little by little. The power of space around Yi-chun continued to expand and expand. 2 hours later, Yi-chun's eyes suddenly opened. Success! At this moment, the system's notification rang out. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi-chun for completely refining the space origin source and becoming the second person to control the space origin source. Special reward title, Space Supremacy. Ding! Special storyline mission, Space Supremacy activated. Ding! There are no two supremacies. After player Yi-chun ascends, he must obtain the position of space supremacy within 10,000 years. Otherwise, his physical body and primordial spirit will be sealed forever. Chapter 471. As soon as the series of system notifications ended, Yi-chun could no longer remain calm. F***CK. Is this to prevent me from helping great immortal Yangmei? Or is this a punishment or restriction because I directly controlled the space origin? No, it's impossible for me not to help great immortal Yangmei. In other words, the system is punishing me for taking a shortcut and directly controlling the space origin. Yi-chun could not help but think this way. After all, in order to jump out of the river of fate, great immortal Yangmei had purposely sent a clone to the lower realm, came to the reincarnation valley, and secretly gave the space origin to Yi-chun. To be precise, this was karma, and Yi-chun had to repay it no matter what. But now, the system had directly issued a special plot mission, Space Supremacy. This was already obvious. The system wanted Yi-chun to compete with great immortal Yangmei. How could Yi-chun not know what kind of existence great immortal Yangmei was? If nothing unexpected happened, this guy would be 100% unsealed after Hong Jun proved his Tao and officially come out. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that the space demon god, great immortal Yangmei, was more powerful than Hong Jun. Now, Yi-chun had not even ascended, but he had to be prepared to fight against great immortal Yangmei, and the time limit was 10,000 years. In other words, from now on, within 10,000 years, Yi-chun had to prove his Tao and become a sage, and his strength had to surpass great immortal Yangmei's. Otherwise, he would be completely sealed. For Yi-chun, this was naturally a punishment. One had to know that even an existence like Hong Jun took billions of years to prove his Tao. One could imagine how difficult it was to prove one's Tao and become a sage within 10,000 years. F***CK. It was a pie in the sky, but there were stones in the pie, and they were the kind that could not be removed if his teeth were not good. He would not be able to enjoy it. Thinking of this, Yi-chun could not help but raise his eyebrows. Attaining the Tao and becoming a saint in 10,000 years was no different than the ravings of a fool to others, but it wasn't impossible to Yi-chun. This was because Yi-chun's territory was built with a god-level village creation token. It had the ability to gather the destiny of heaven and earth. Once the entire country ascended, it would definitely become a special existence, a dynasty of destiny. A karmic dynasty was born from karmic luck, and it had the ability to penetrate the heavens and the earth. It was impervious to calamities, impervious to misfortune, impervious to all techniques, and repelling all evil. Of course, this was only the basic characteristic of a karmic dynasty. Most importantly, once one became a karmic dynasty, then from the emperor to the commoners, everyone would be able to increase their cultivation speed with the support of karmic luck. And the extent of this increase was far beyond imagination, to the point of being abnormal. Take a newly established Providence dynasty, for example. Under the blessing of the providence of heaven and earth, the emperor's cultivation speed would be 81 times faster than normal. Officials would have their cultivation speed reduced according to their rank. When it came to commoners, their cultivation speed would be reduced to 9 times. However, even 9 times the cultivation speed was enough to make all living beings shocked, envious, and even jealous. In Yi Chen's previous life, a batch of karmic dynasties had appeared in the Eldritch world. Unfortunately, they were all destroyed in the end. As for the reason, it was very simple. The demon clan ruled the heavens, and the wizard clan ruled the earth. They simply did not allow the existence of dynasties that fought for the providence of heaven and earth. Of course, this was not important. What was important was that the karmic dynasty could continue to advance. With every level up, the emperor would be able to increase his cultivation speed by 9 times on the basis of his previous cultivation speed. To put it simply, the stronger the karmic dynasty, the higher the cultivation speed increase it provided. In the end, increasing one's cultivation speed by 10,000 times was no longer a dream. And this was Yi Chen's confidence. Just cultivating alone would not be a problem for him to become a saint within 10,000 years. Not to mention that Yi Chen had not refined the 5-element spirit pearl to advance to the 5 elements divine constitution. If Yi Chen gathered all the 5-element spirit pearls, refined them all, and advanced to the 5 elements divine constitution, then Yi Chen's basic cultivation speed would definitely be 1,000 times or even 10,000 times faster than it was now. Moreover, Yi Chen could continue to kill the demon clan and rapidly increase his strength. He could also search for heaven and earth spiritual materials everywhere and rapidly increase his strength. These were all things that Yi Chen relied on to rapidly increase his strength. Therefore, Yi Chen was not worried about becoming a saint within 10,000 years at all. Of course, there were advantages and disadvantages to the karmic dynasty. To be precise, the karmic dynasty was a double-edged sword. It was eternal and immortal, and there were endless benefits. Once the dynasty was destroyed from top to bottom, everyone would be devoured by the karmic dynasty, and the ruler of the karmic dynasty would end up the most miserable. However, Yi Chen was not worried about this at all. Even if Yi Chen did not establish the karmic dynasty, after ascending to the Eldritch world, the demon clan would still regard Yi Chen as an enemy, or rather, as a ration. Therefore, there was no need to worry at all. If one wanted to continuously become stronger and establish a foothold in the Eldritch world, there was only one word: fight. It was simple, crude, and unreasonable, but that was the truth. The stronger one was, the more one could establish a foothold in the Eldritch world. How could Yi Chen, who had been reborn, not know this? Not only did Yi Chen know this, but he had also been preparing for ascension to the Eldritch world. Otherwise, Yi Chen would have ascended long ago instead of hanging around in the newbie area of the 3 kingdoms. To Yi Chen, the more prepared he was, the more confident he would be after ascending. When the plan of the newbie area of the 3 kingdoms was completed, he would ascend to the Eldritch world. At that time, he would directly snatch all kinds of resources in the Eldritch world. 10,000 years was enough. At the thought of this, Yi Chen directly looked at the attributes of the space supremacy. Space supremacy controls space. His ability will continue to become stronger as his realm increases. The introduction was very simple and crude, but the word control directly described the characteristics of the space supremacy. As long as it was within the space that Yi Chen could control, Yi Chen would be the absolute king of that space. At the thought of this, Yi Chen moved his mind. In the next second, Yi Chen directly appeared in the reincarnation forest. Looking at the towering trees around him, Yi Chen could not help but raise his eyebrows. Then, with a wave of his right hand, the God Slayer instantly appeared. In the next second, Yi Chen stabbed with his spear. There was a buzzing sound. The front half of the God Slayer actually disappeared into thin air. However, Yi Chen was not surprised at all. Instead, he calmly pulled the Godslayer back. When the front half of the Godslayer that had disappeared appeared in front of Yi Chun with a huge fish in the sea, the originally calm Yi Chun could not help but smile. Controlling space is indeed awesome. As long as it is within the range of my divine sense, I can go wherever I want and stab wherever I want. It was Yi Chun who had used a space ability. In other words, he had opened up a space 150 kilometers away in the sea and sent the Godslayer directly over. Then he stabbed a huge fish to death with his spear and directly brought the fish over. Chapter 472. Damn it, even if I ascend now, I can still kill the Demon King with one shot. Just as Yi Chun thought of this, two cracking sounds suddenly sounded in his mind. Walla, walla. At this moment, the system notification sounded. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun for fulfilling the special conditions. The seal is automatically removed. Ding! The seal on player Yi Chun's physical body has been removed. Ding! The seal on player Yi Chun's primordial spirit has been removed. Ding! Player Yi Chun's strength has seriously exceeded the upper limit of the novice zone of the three kingdoms. Do you want to ascend immediately? As soon as the system notification ended, Yi Chun couldn't help but be taken aback. Damn it! The seal that the heavenly Tao of the three kingdoms novice zone placed on me has been removed by itself. Wait! Special conditions, space origin, space supremacy, space Tao. Damn it. What special conditions? It's clearly my destructive power of space. It's even more perverse than my physical body and primordial spirit. The heavenly Tao of the three kingdoms novice zone can't seal it at all. That's why the seal on my physical body and primordial spirit was removed. Thinking of this, Yi Chun could not help but raise his eyebrows. After which, he made his choice without hesitation. No, what kind of joke is this? Yi Chun's plan in the three kingdoms novice zone hasn't been completed yet, and he hasn't even established a country. If he ascends now, Yi Chun's loss would be huge. As soon as Yi Chun made his decision, the system notification sounded again. Ding! A reminder to player Yi Chun. Space ability can severely damage the world in the novice zone. Do not use it casually. Otherwise, a forced ascension will be activated. Player Yi Chun will not be able to stay in the novice zone of the three kingdoms. As soon as the system notification ended, Yi Chun couldn't help but smirk. Damn it, I knew it. What bullsh asterisk T special conditions. If it can seal me, it will definitely seal me. Unfortunately, space supremacy controlled space and couldn't be sealed at all. Thinking of this, Yi Chun could not help but laugh wildly at the sky. His laughter was carefree. Yi Chun had reached the mortal evolution state before and was sealed. He condensed his primordial spirit, but was still sealed. Fortunately, his physical strength could not be sealed, and neither could his divine sense. Otherwise, Yi Chun would have become an ordinary person. Of course, this wasn't important. What was important was that Yi Chun was definitely unhappy. But now Yi Chun was happy. This was because the heavenly Tao of the three kingdoms novice zone was unable to seal Yi Chun's spatial abilities. The reason was simple. Yi Chun's spatial ability wasn't a spell, nor was it a divine ability. It was a genuine great Tao, the great Tao of space. Of course, what Yi Chun had used was not even the tip of the iceberg. However, it was an indisputable fact that this spatial ability belonged to the great Tao of space. And it was precisely because they were unable to seal the great Tao of space that the heavenly Tao of the novice region of the three kingdoms made a compromise. This was because Yi Chun's ability to control space was far more destructive than Yi Chun's physical body and primordial spirit. It was better to remove the seal and restrict Yi Chun's ability to use the great Tao of space. To be precise, it was to restrict Yi Chun's ability to use spatial shattering. Of course, the so-called restriction was nonsense. If Yi Chun wanted to use it, the heavenly Tao of the three kingdoms novice zone could not restrict it. However, the heavenly Tao of the three kingdoms novice zone could indeed use Yi Chun's act of destroying the world in the novice region to expel Yi Chun from the three kingdoms novice zone. Yi-Chen was aware of this. However, Yi-Chen had no intention of using spatial shattering. After all, this was the Three Kingdoms Novice Zone. If he used spatial shattering and destroyed the Three Kingdoms Novice Zone, Yi-Chen would lose more than he gained. Of course, this didn't stop Yi-Chen from feeling good. At this moment, an extremely powerful aura suddenly rose from Yi-Chen's body. That aura carried a strong pressure that caused the surrounding air to solidify and the beasts to fall silent. Yi-Chen's dermic powers surged and his primordial spirit stretched. The powerful aura was released without restraint. After a while, Yi-Chen retracted his surging dermic powers. His primordial spirit also sat quietly in the purple mansion. After sensing the situation in his body, Yi-Chen smiled again and looked at his stats panel. When Yi-Chen saw the 1,170 innate attribute points on the stats panel and 3 lottery chances, the corner of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. Yi-Chen had previously obtained a lot of innate attribute points and a chance to draw a lottery. However, Yi-Chen's strength was already invincible in the Three Kingdoms Novice Zone. Moreover, Yi-Chen was busy leading his troops to conquer the Golden Turban and eliminate the demon race. Therefore, Yi-Chen didn't pay much attention to these. After all, he wasn't in a hurry. Now, Yi-Chen wasn't in a hurry either. However, since he had time, he could directly use it. There was no need to keep saving it. Thinking of this, Yi-Chen didn't hesitate to add the 1,170 innate attribute points to his primordial spirit. In the next second, an extremely powerful aura suddenly erupted from Yi-Chen's body. The moment that aura appeared, the land of Yuzhou and the vast sea trembled together. At the same time, an indescribable feeling of comfort instantly appeared in Yi-Chen's body. It was so comfortable from head to toe that even his soul was cheering. Yi-Chen's primordial spirit in the Purple Mansion was even more excited. Then, it saw Yi-Chen's primordial spirit expand until it was the same size as Yi-Chen's body. Only then did it stop. Just at this moment, Yi-Chen opened his eyes. 2 beams of light flashed in his eyes. He had advanced, ding! Congratulations to player for advancing to the Nirvana realm. The moment the system notification ended, a thunderous sound that shook the heavens and earth resounded. The sky above Yuzhou was instantly covered by incomparably dark clouds. Then it became thicker and thicker. At this moment, the heavens and earth also became as dark as night. Seeing this, Yi-Chen couldn't help but frown. Damn it, could it be that immemorial cultivators would be struck by lightning every time they advanced? Damn it, so be it. Immemorial cultivators were perverts anyway. Immemorial cultivators were already able to form their primordial spirit at the Purple Mansion realm. Now that I am in the Nirvana realm, my primordial spirit is already the same size as my body. When I reach the next realm, the Immortal Foundation realm, I will forge a level 9 Immortal Foundation. Thinking of this, Yi-Chen's Cosmos Bow and Heaven-Shaking Arrow appeared in an instant. Looking at the tribulation clouds that were getting thicker and thicker, Yi-Chen sneered. He grabbed the Cosmos Bow with his left hand and the Heaven-Shaking Arrow with his right hand. Then he pulled with force. Clang! A crisp sound of an explosion rang out. The Cosmos Bow was instantly pulled into a full moon. In the next second, Yi-Chen let go of his right hand without hesitation. Bang, bang, bang. 3 violent sounds of air exploding rang out. 3 heaven-shaking arrows instantly turned into shooting stars and disappeared in a flash. In the next second, the heavy tribulation clouds suddenly started to spin. Then, it sped up again and again. In a breath's time, a huge tornado appeared and brought the heavy tribulation clouds up to the sky. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of thunder that shook the heavens and earth suddenly rang out. In the sky, hundreds of lightning pythons appeared in the tribulation clouds that were being swept up by the tornado. Then, more and more lightning pythons appeared and became denser and denser. They directly lit up the pitch-black earth. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of thunder became louder and louder. However, it was useless. The tribulation clouds couldn't escape from the tornado. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the pitch-black tribulation clouds in the sky dissipated, and the heavens and earth returned to normal. When Yichin saw this, he curled his lips in disdain. Damn it, immemorial cultivators were really envied by the heavens. Every time they advanced, they would be struck by lightning, and each time was more ruthless than the last. However, I have a spiritual treasure, so it's useless against me. Chapter 473. Thinking of this, Yichin's primordial spirit moved, and his divine sense instantly covered an area with a radius of 5,000 kilometers. Every blade of grass, tree, flower, and leaf in this range, from the small ant in the soil to the big beasts that had turned into giant beasts and attacked the city crazily, were all under the perception of Yichin's primordial spirit. Yichin's primordial spirit could sense all objects, whether they were stationary or moving, clearly and meticulously. There was nothing he could miss out on. Even a mosquito that was trying to suck the blood of a demonic beast thousands of kilometers away was clearly seen by Yichin's primordial spirit. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Yichin withdrew his spiritual sense and opened his eyes. Not bad, not bad. His divine sense could already cover a radius of 5,000 kilometers. It would not be a problem to find the three immortal island now. Thinking of this, Yichin couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. There were countless natural treasures on the three immortal island. Once they found the three immortal island, Yichin and the entire Samsara city would benefit. Whether it was Yichin's women, Yichin's subordinates, or Yichin's soldiers, they would all be greatly improved. This was also one of Yichin's goals for staying in the novice area of the three kingdoms. To Yichin, if he could get 10 good things, he definitely wouldn't stop at 9. Of course, he needed a certain opportunity to find the three immortal island. For Yichin, this opportunity was rapidly approaching 100% at this moment. It was obvious that Yichin's primordial spirit could already explore a radius of 5,000 kilometers. This range was simply beyond the imagination of ordinary people. More importantly, the exploration of the primordial spirit could completely ignore the boundary and see through all illusions. The boundary outside the three immortal island was indeed difficult for ordinary people to cross, but it was not a problem for Yichin at all. Thinking of this, Yichin couldn't help but smile, and then he looked at the lottery option on the attribute panel. Looking at the lottery option that had been accumulated 3 times, Yichin couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. He wondered what prize would appear this time. Thinking of this, Yichin clicked on the lottery option. Ding! Detected that player Yichin has 3 lottery chances. Would you like to activate the combined mode? As soon as the system notification ended, Yichin couldn't help but be stunned. Unity mode? What the F***CK is this, ding? A reminder to player Yichin. While drawing the lottery in Unity mode, all the lottery chances can be combined into one. The number and grade of the lottery items can be increased at random. When Yichin heard this, he could not help but frown. Damn it, isn't this a trap for me? It was no wonder that Yichin thought this way. Combining 3 lottery chances into one would increase the number of lottery items. Yichin liked this, but there was no guarantee that the number of items would increase randomly. If it was a random increment of 1, or even 0, then Yichin would have suffered a huge loss. As for increasing the grade of the lottery items, if he encountered a special characteristic with great luck, it wouldn't be necessary at all. One had to know that once one's luck erupted, the prize for the draw would definitely be extraordinary. Yichin had already verified this point several times. Calculating the time, now should be the time for a special characteristic with great luck. Should he only draw once and keep the other 2, or should he take a gamble and combine the 3 lottery chances into one? Just as Yichin hadn't made up his mind, the system notification sounded again. Ding! Player Yichin has 5 seconds left to make a decision. If you miss it, you will automatically give up on the lottery. After hearing the system notification, Yichin's face froze. Damn it. You still don't want me to think about it? 5, 4, 3. After hearing the system's countdown, Yichin was about to make a decision when he suddenly thought of something. Then his eyes lit up. 2. In the next second, Yi-chun made his choice without hesitation. I choose the combined mode. Ding! The combined mode is activated. Do you want to start the lottery? If you refuse, you will give up. Damn it, give up my ass. Start. Ding! The lottery begins. As soon as the system notification ended, a huge wheel appeared in front of Yi-chun. After seeing the items on the wheel, Yi-chun's eyes widened. Damn it! Damn it! The number of items on the wheel was exactly the same as the previous lottery. There were 5 items, and all of them were extraordinary. Godslayer Fragment X98, Chaos Bell X1, Thunder Origin X1, Ginseng Fruit X 1 million, Enlightenment Stone X 50 million. Looking at the 5 items on the wheel, Yi-chun's eyes shone brighter and brighter. After a few breaths, Yi-chun let out a long breath and then laughed wildly. Damn it! Damn it! Great luck, I knew it. Great luck wouldn't be bad. Damn it. So what if the number of items increased randomly in the combined mode? Even if I encounter great luck, I still have to kneel. In fact, Yi-chun's choice of the combined mode was just a calculation or a guess. To be precise, it was a lucky draw in the combined mode. Once one's great luck exploded, it was very likely that the random number of items would be increased to the maximum. And now, the items on the wheel undoubtedly confirmed Yi-chun's judgment. Godslayer Fragment X98. As long as he drew this, Yi-chun's Godslayer Fragment would officially become a complete Khanate cardinal treasure, the Godslayer. This was undoubtedly a great thing for Yi-chun. One had to know that in the previous lottery draws, when he encountered the Godslayer Fragment, it was always one piece. And now, there were 98 fragments. Just this alone, combining 1 out of 3 lottery chances was already worth it. It was super worth it. After all, the complete Godslayer was a genuine Khanate cardinal treasure. Once the Godslayer was collected, the power it could unleash was 100% terrifying. Therefore, this alone was enough to make Yi-chun excited. Of course, the other 4 items were also good things, and they also made Yi-chun excited. Enlightenment Stones X 50 million. This was one of Yi-chun's goals in the 3 Kingdoms novice area. The more he had, the more help it would provide to Yi-chun. Whether it was refining the 5 elements spirit pearl, advancing to the 5 elements divine body, comprehending the great Tao of space, cultivating the 9 revolutions mysterious art, or the Shunshao lightning controlling technique, Yi-chun would definitely get twice the result with half the effort with the help of the Enlightenment Stones. Needless to say, Enlightenment Stones X 50 million were very important. Ginseng Fruits X 1 million could completely improve Yi-chun's strength. Even if he couldn't reach the level of Daluo Jinxian, becoming a golden immortal was no problem. Needless to say, this was also very important. The Bell of Chaos was a Khanate cardinal treasure. It could attack and defend. It could imprison time, suppress space, and stand on top of one's head. Needless to say, this was also very important. Thunder Origin X1. This involved the foundation of the great Tao of Thunder. If Yi-chun drew this and refined it successfully, then the great Tao of Thunder would definitely open the door to Yi-chun. Coupled with the support of the Shunshao lightning controlling technique, it would be difficult for Yi-chun not to control the great Tao of Thunder. Yi-chun wanted any of the 5 items. Of course, Yi-chun wanted all of them. Unfortunately, this was a lottery, and he could only draw 1 at a time. Just as Yi-chun thought of this, the system's prompt suddenly sounded. Ding! Player Yi-chun has 5 seconds to choose. After that time, he will automatically be considered to have given up on the lottery. F***CK. Again. Chapter 474. Yi-chun cursed angrily and made his choice. Begin the lucky draw. Following Yi-chun's thought, the big wheel began to spin. As Yi-chun looked at the 5 items on the Wheel of Fortune changing positions continuously, his mood changed as well. He didn't expect that this combined mode of the lucky draw could also be blessed with great fortune. He was really lucky. Damn it, I wonder which item I will get. It'd be best if it's the Chaos Bell. Hee, if I really get the Chaos Bell, Dong Wang Tai will probably cry to death, but F***ing Hell, he also wanted to use the old ways. Yi-chan was a little conflicted as he thought about it and pointed to stop. The spinning speed of the big will began to slow down. One by one, the pointer continued to move past the items. Godslayer Fragment X98, Chaos Bell X1, Lightning Origin X1, Ginseng Fruit X 1 million, Enlightenment Stone X 50 million. When the pointer of the big will began to stop and pointed to Lightning Origin X1, Yi-chen's face froze. This speed, damn. The Lightning Origin was out of the question. If Yi-chan obtained the Lightning Origin and refined it, the Great Tao of Lightning would open the door to Yi-chan. How could Yi-chan not want it? Unfortunately, the pointer had turned. At this moment, the pointer pointed to Ginseng Fruit X 1 million. When he saw the pointer's speed, Yi-chen's mouth twitched. Damn it, Ginseng Fruit X 1 million. It's out of the question. If Yi-chan obtained Ginseng Fruit X 1 million, he would definitely advance to Golden Immortal. Even his subordinates could become immortals. Therefore, Yi-chan wanted it very much. Unfortunately, the pointer had turned. It didn't matter. These 5 items, no matter which one it was, were very good. He wouldn't lose anything from this lucky draw. Just as Yi-chan thought of this, the pointer stopped. Just as Yi-chan thought, the pointer passed Ginseng Fruit X 1 million and pointed to Enlightenment Stone X 50 million. Seeing this, Yi-chan couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Not bad, 50 million Tao Comprehension Stones. If it was just this storyline mission, he wouldn't have been able to exchange for this. Now that he had 50 million Tao Comprehension Stones, it was enough to refine the 5 elements Spirit Pearl and advance his 5 elements Divine Body. Moreover, there would be a lot left over. Most importantly, when he used the Enlightenment Stone, his subordinates could also benefit from it and enter a state of enlightenment. Just as Yi-chan thought of this, the needle suddenly moved a little. It was very small, but it deviated from its original position. Looking at the pointer between Enlightenment Stone X 50 million and Godslayer Fragment X98, Yi-chan was stunned. What the hell could it be? Just as Yi-chan thought up to this point, the sound of the system notification rang out. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi-chan for obtaining Enlightenment Stones X 50 million. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi-chan for obtaining Godslayer Fragment X98. After hearing the system's notification, Yi-chan's eyes widened. Then, he threw his head back and laughed wildly. What the hell, this is great. Yi-chan didn't expect that this time, not only would he encounter the combination mode, but he would also encounter the explosion of good fortune. More importantly, this time, he would get 2 of them at once. For Yi-chan, this was simply too great. Just as Yi-chan finished thinking, 2 boxes appeared in front of him. At this moment, the Godslayer, which had been in Yi-chan's mind for a long time, suddenly appeared. Then, the body of the spear began to vibrate continuously. Buzz, 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 desire, incomparable desire. The God-slaying spear was constantly transmitting thoughts of desire to Yi-chan. After sensing the God-slayer's desire, Yi-chan laughed and said, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry, I won't forget about you." When Yi-chan finished speaking, a palm-sized screen of light emitting a pale blue light appeared in front of Yi-chan in an instant. Looking at the pale blue screen of light, Yi-chan raised his eyebrows involuntarily. If he hadn't refined the space origin and mastered some spatial abilities, he wouldn't have been able to create his own storage space. At this thought, Yi-chan made a grabbing motion with his right hand and threw the 2 wooden boxes toward the pale blue screen of light. In the next second, the 2 wooden boxes entered the pale blue screen of light one after the other and then disappeared. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Sensing the disappearance of the Godslayer fragment, the Godslayer began to tremble anxiously. Seeing this, Yi-chan shook his head helplessly. Then, with a thought, his consciousness instantly entered the pale blue screen of light. In the next second, Yi-chan's consciousness arrived in a space that covered an area of 10,000 miles. It was empty here. There was no time, no air, and no earth. Everything seemed to be still. If anyone else saw this space, they would definitely be dumbfounded. What the F***CK, this storage space is 2F** king big. In fact, this really was a storage space. A storage space that Yi-chan had created himself. After all, Yi Chun had refined the space origin and become a space supremacy. Creating a storage space was a piece of cake for him. Yi Chun looked at the storage space he had created and couldn't help but smirk. Not bad, not bad. This space could fit the entire 3 Immortal Island in without a problem. Thinking of this, Yi Chun waved his right hand. The 2 wooden boxes that had already entered the space instantly came to Yi Chun's side. Looking at the 2 wooden boxes, Yi Chun's mind moved and the 2 wooden boxes instantly opened. In the next second, 50 million Tao comprehension stones and 98 fragments of the God-slaying spear appeared in the air. Looking at the mountain of enlightenment stones piled up together, Yi Chun couldn't help but smile. The storage space gifted by the system alone wouldn't be able to store all these enlightenment stones. With 50 million pieces, it wouldn't be a problem to hold on until he ascended. However, the more enlightenment stones there were, the better. Thinking of this, Yi Chun's mind moved, and the items in the space gifted by the system instantly appeared in the space. Looking at the items floating in the space, Yi Chun couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Then, he took the 98 Godslayer fragments and left the space. The instant Yi Chun's consciousness left the space, the 98 Godslayer fragments that came out together instantly trembled and then flew toward the Godslayer that had been waiting for a long time. In the next second, the Godslayer exploded with black light. A tyrannical aura that could kill everything suddenly appeared and then soared into the sky. That aura was tyrannical, wild, as if it wanted to tear apart heaven and earth and destroy the world. Yi Chun, who had been looking at the Godslayer all this time, couldn't help but raise his eyebrows when he saw this. Others might think that the Godslayer was tyrannical, but Yi Chun knew that it was just the Godslayer venting and declaring its anger. It had been dormant for a long time, so long that it couldn't remember clearly. It was only when Yi Chun obtained it that it was reborn. However, it was incomplete. Its noble status as a Khanate cardinal treasure had long since left it. It was indignant and angry, but it couldn't do anything about it because it was indeed incomplete. It couldn't even compare to a Khanate numinous treasure. But now it was complete. It had officially regained its status as a Khanate cardinal treasure. It was the one and only Godslayer. It wanted to announce to the world that it had been reborn. Ding! Congratulations to player Yi Chun. The Godslayer has been restored to 100%. It has officially regained its status as a Khanate cardinal treasure. Godslayer, Khanate cardinal treasure. Damaged when Pangu split open the sky and fell into the mortal world. Restored to 100%. Owner, Yi Chun. Special characteristics. 1. Shatter. Shatter weapons lower than the Godslayer. The lower the grade, the higher the chance. 2. Soul Devour. Devour souls. The stronger the living being killed, the lower the chance of being devoured. 3. Godslayer. Slay the primordial spirit. The stronger the living being attacked by the Godslayer, the lower the chance of having their primordial spirit destroyed. Chapter 475. Looking at the God-slaying spear that no longer had the word incomplete, Yi Chun could not help but raise his eyebrows. The complete Godslayer was a genuine primordial treasure. A monster king could kill anyone with a poke. Even a heavenly monster wouldn't be able to leave in one piece. Thinking of this, the corners of Yi Chun's mouth curled up. Hum. The earth-shaking buzzing continued. The Godslayer's aura grew stronger and stronger. When the Godslayer announced to the world that it had been reborn, the people of Samsara City were in an uproar. On the streets of Samsara City, countless citizens looked up at the sky with fanaticism. To be more precise, they were looking at the black, thick, and domineering God-slaying spear in the sky. The spear exuded a wild, domineering, and destructive aura. All of them shouted excitedly at the sky. Long live his lordship! Long live his lordship! At this moment, the people of Samsara City were exhilarated. Their lordship had protected them once again. A moment ago, the sky was clear and cloudless. Who would have thought that dark clouds would cover the sun and thunder would rumble? If it were a normal thunderstorm, the people wouldn't be alarmed or panicked. However, the thick and heavy clouds that appeared this time were too abnormal. Furthermore, they carried a dense aura of destruction. Everyone felt the danger of death. They didn't know why this had suddenly appeared, but it didn't stop them from being alarmed. However, they weren't alarmed for long. A powerful tornado appeared out of nowhere. It swept up the dark clouds and flew rapidly toward the sky. Not long after, the dark sky dissipated. Everything was calm again. But now, the God-Slayer had suddenly appeared in the sky, emitting a powerful aura. With all of this added together, the commoners couldn't help but think of Yi-Chun. In the eyes of the people of Samsara City, it was their lordship, Yi-Chun, who had resolved the crisis and saved Samsara City. Otherwise, how could the God-Slayer appear in the sky? In fact, the commoners did not know that the lightning tribulation had come because of Yi-Chun, and it had also been eliminated because of Yi-Chun. However, this wasn't important. What was important was that after this incident, the people's worship and faith in Yi-Chun had deepened. To Yi-Chun, this was undoubtedly a good thing. Even if it was only incidental and insignificant, the essence of a good thing could not be erased. Reincarnation Forest. Yi-Chun shook his head helplessly as he looked at the God-Slayer in the sky. This fellow had really held it in for too long. Just as Yi-Chun finished thinking, the God-Slayer's extremely tyrannical aura instantly retracted, then flew to Yi-Chun's side, circled around Yi-Chun 3 times in a fawning manner, then merged into Yi-Chun's body. Seeing this, Yi-Chun couldn't help but smile. Then his mind moved. In the next second, the space in front of Yi-Chun suddenly distorted. Looking at the distorted space, Yi-Chun couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, then took a step forward. Then, Yi-Chun disappeared into the Reincarnation Forest. Reincarnation Valley, Reincarnation City, City Lord Mansion, Main Hall. Kai-In, Mi-Zhu, Sun Qing, Chun Kun, Zhou Zong, and Tong Yuan were discussing the anomaly with worried expressions. Previously, when Yi-Chun had advanced and attracted the lightning tribulation, the commotion was so great that all the commoners in Yuzhou were shocked by the sudden appearance of the lightning tribulation, let alone Samsara City, which was the closest to the lightning tribulation. Kai-In, Mi-Zhu, Sun Qing, and Chun Kun might not have been clear at first, but when Zhou Zong and Tong Yuan returned to Samsara City, they directly told them about Yang Mei Immortal. It was because of Yang Mei Immortal's sudden appearance that they were worried. After all, Yang Mei Immortal's appearance and the lightning tribulation came suddenly. How could they not be worried? However, what they didn't expect was that the thunder calamity would come and go so suddenly. Before it even started to show its power, it was already broken. Until now, the huge tornado, filled with thunder and lightning in the sky, kept appearing in front of everyone's eyes. That scene was very shocking and exciting. Of course, when they saw the God-Slayer in the sky, they immediately confirmed one thing. Their lord, Yi-Chun, had made a move. However, this didn't stop Kai-In, Mi-Zhu, Sun Qing, Chun Kun, Zhou Zong, and Tong Yuan from worrying. After all, they couldn't tell whether Yang Mei Immortal was a friend or foe. As for the reason, it was very simple. The lightning tribulation appeared too suddenly, and Yang Mei Immortal was coincidentally discovered by Yi-Chun at this moment. They couldn't help but link the lightning tribulation to Yang Mei Immortal. Just as everyone was worrying, the space in the City Lord Mansion's main hall suddenly distorted. In the next second, Yi-Chun walked out. After seeing Yi-Chun suddenly appear, Kai-In, Mi-Zhu, Sun Qing, Chun Kun, Zhou Zong, and Tong Yuan were all stunned. Then, they hurriedly stood up and bowed. "Greetings, Lord." They didn't expect Yi-Chun to have the ability to travel through space. Otherwise, they wouldn't be stunned. Yi-Chun glanced at his subordinates and nodded with a smile. Then, he looked at the maid on duty at the door and ordered, "Go," and asked the ladies to come over. "Yes, Lord." When the maid heard this, she hurriedly bowed and responded. Then, she hurriedly ran to the back of the mansion. "Lord, is Yang Mei Immortal an enemy or a friend?" Kai-In looked at Yi-Chun and asked with a serious face. After hearing Kai Yin's words, Mi Zhu, Sun Qing, Chen Kun, Tong Yuan, and Zhou Zong all looked at Yi Chun and waited for Yi Chen's answer. When Yi Chen heard this, he couldn't help but glance at his subordinates. When Yi Chen saw the resolute and unyielding look in their eyes, he suddenly felt warm in his heart. They were worried about Yi Chen's safety and the safety of Samsara City. How could Yi Chen not see that? Of course, Yi Chen also saw that they didn't have the slightest intention to escape or fear. To be precise, if Yang Mei Immortal was really an enemy of Samsara City and Yi Chen, they wouldn't hesitate to fight Yang Mei Immortal to the death. Thinking of this, Yi Chen suddenly smiled and said, Yang Mei Immortal isn't an enemy. We're just taking what we need. You don't have to worry about it. Yes, Lord. When Kai Yin, Mi Zhu, Sun Qing, Chen Kun, Tong Yuan, and Zhou Zong heard this, they were all stunned and then bowed together. Yi Chen nodded. At this moment, crisp footsteps sounded. Soon, Zhao Yu, Chan Wan, Kai Mei Mi Zhen, Huang Wan and the 5 Jin sisters came to the living room. When they saw Yi Chen, they all breathed a sigh of relief and then saluted together. Greetings, husband. Obviously, they were also affected by the change just now. To be precise, they were also worried about Yi Chen's safety. Now that they saw that Yi Chen was unscathed, they were naturally relieved. When Yi Chen heard the reassurance in their words, he felt warm in his heart again. He then nodded with a smile and said, I've called you all here to witness something with me. When they heard this, they were all stunned. At this moment, Yi Chen came to the center of the living room. With a thought, the foundation stone of Samsara City, the golden stone tablet, slowly rose from the ground. Looking at the unique golden stone tablet, Yi Chen smiled slightly. Then, he waved his right hand, and the Immortal City Advancement Order appeared in an instant. After glancing at the Immortal City Advancement Order, Yi Chen made his choice without hesitation. Use. Ding. The target of the Immortal City Advancement Order is Samsara City. Confirm? Once confirmed, it can't be changed. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.